We intend to provide like brief opening statements, just so that the commissioners have an idea as to what the issues are. I would like to be.
Okay, I don't, if the commission,
We would
Approve
be
of-
honored, Barrister, honored,
Thank you, sir.
but I haven't started. Do I do that now?
I think you can start now.
Bismarck City Services, Civil Service Commission will be called to order, and our first roll call. Does our secretary want to call the roll?
Roger,
Here.
Chad Karajian,
Here.
John Britnell,
Present.
Very good. Our next order of business is to approve the minutes of the last meeting we had, which are attached.
There's 2 sets of minutes.
There are 2 sets of minutes that need to be approved. We will start with the oldest set dated the 12th of the 23. That doesn't seem correct, does it? Is that the last we didn't approve of?
So in July, when we met for an appeal, those were the minutes to be approved and they were tabled. And were never approved, and I didn't catch it for our organizational meeting earlier this month.
Oh, so it wasn't our last meeting, it's just a set of orphaned minutes. Okay? And then we have the minutes of the 8th of January. I understand that I don't know of any corrections to the oldest set. But Mr. Cregan, I believe you had a concern about an issue on the correction.
Not really a concern, just a note that my name was spelled wrong. Second to last paragraph.
Names are very special. Thank you. Now, hearing any other corrections, I would entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes in both sets.
You want one motion for both? minutes?
Absolutely. We're going to be on fast track.
Okay, I move that we approve both sets of minutes.
I will second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, vote aye. Opposed, same sign. Minutes have been passed. Okay, we are now at item B, a review appeal from Samantha Grant. Ms. Grant is here. See you. Dustin Benji, our representative, is with you. I'm going to turn to Ms. Julie. I believe you then, I have nothing in my script here.
Okay, well,
So I'm turning to you to bail me out. And I'm on camera and I want to make my debut really good.
so I think what we can start with is Mr. Vinci wanted to have the parties make opening statements, brief opening statements. And then the city had intended to ask that the witnesses be sequestered. We have most of our witnesses out in the hallway and then we'll just have one more go out. And then we were gonna start with the city's case, call witnesses in order. And then Mr. Vinci would cross and call any witnesses Ms. Rand wanted to call. And then turn it over.
Sounds like delightful. I will
Turn it over to the commission.
start with our opening remarks as commissioner. I introduced myself to Ms. Grand and indicated, but I will now do it publicly for the record. Commissioners, will you bear with me? We have one responsibility to you and to the other employees of the city of Bismarck. For the City Civil Service Commission, we have a responsibility to hear what you have to say. We have made no decision. All we have seen is that you're coming to visit with us, okay? We have been sent some materials in advance. Our job is number one, to listen to you, and I want you to tell me at the end of the meeting where you listened to. And secondly, I don't know what the outcome is, but I want you to tell us at the end of the meeting, do you feel you were treated fairly? If we can accomplish those 2 things, then we've done our job of a Civil Service Commission. Is that acceptable to you? Thank you.
Oh, shall I start?
Sure.
So the city will just make a very brief opening statement. And that statement would include that if this case is concerning Ms. Samantha Grant as a former firefighter, she was terminated for not following through on a fit for duty procedure as ordered by commanding officers within the fire department. And we'll get to that information shortly here. So the case is this: was Samantha Grant aware of the standard operating guidelines and policies and her obligations under them? Did a medical event occur that would affect her ability to perform her duties as a firefighter? That answer is yes. Was she told by a supervisor that she had to participate in the fit for duty process? That answer is yes. Was she given multiple opportunities to participate? That answer is yes. Did she participate? The answer is no. Was she therefore in violation of policy and ordinance? The answer is yes. She was terminated, and at the end of this proceeding, the city is going to ask that you uphold the termination. And that concludes my statement.
Thank you for brevity.
Thank you. Members of the commission, I'll stand if I may. It's kind of customary for the opening statements. So again, my name is Justin Vingy. My client Samantha Grand is seated just immediately to my left. She had worked for the Bismarck Fire Department for more than 10 years as a firefighter. She had been a firefighter in another area for about 10 years prior to that. So she is an experienced firefighter. So the issues that we'll be talking about today, at least most of them, they stem from November 24th and incidents happening immediately after that. So November 24th of last year. Samantha, or Firefighter Grand, was on her way to a regularly scheduled shift at the fire hall. It was about a little after 6:30 in the morning. It was a Sunday morning. Ms. Grand, or Firefighter Grand, began to feel lightheaded while she was driving and just about to enter the fire hall. She had rolled down the windows of her vehicle and she experienced a brief instance of passing out. Vehicle was crashed. There was some front end damage. She received medical attention there at the scene. Now, I anticipate that you're going to hear testimony from my client. What she told law enforcement officers at the time that they arrived was that she had had a past fainting spells. Now, she'll agree that those were the words that she used. She didn't recall using them at the time, but she's had the opportunity to watch dash cam video, and she would disagree with the accuracy of those comments, that she had experienced instances of lightheadedness in the couple of months prior to this happening, but nothing severe to the point where she felt that she needed medical attention or that it was an issue. And so obviously the crash on November 24th was significant. It was serious. It was witnessed, the aftermath of it was witnessed by her coworkers, firefighter personnel. And so Firefighter Grand, she took it upon herself to go see her primary care physician, as any reasonable person would do, right? And she was checked out. It was determined that she had low iron, right? That was the cause that was determined. That same doctor issued a physician statement authorizing her to return to work. That was dated, I believe, on November 26th. So it was the Tuesday immediately following this accident. You'll hear that Firefighter Grand told one of her superiors, Luke Teagle, who is here to testify today, that she had received clearance from her doctor to return to work. Initially, that was met with, oh, great. Okay. But then she was told, no, the procedure is you have to go to the Human Performance Center, or I think there was even some confusion because the city or the fire department has switched providers. There's an OCMED, and then there's a Human Performance Center, HPC, you'll hear them referred to. She was told to go to HPC. She went to HPC on 2 occasions. She met with a nurse practitioner. Right? The nurse practitioner informed Firefighter Grand that I'm not here to do a physical. I'm not here to take blood or to do lab work or anything of that nature. I am here to review your medical history. And then I think that the reason that the HPC person is important, or why their opinion matters, is because they're familiar with the regulations that firefighters are supposed to be able to meet certain physical standards, right? That's where that person is important. And so there was some confusion. You'll hear Firefighter Grand testify that, well, this accident happened off duty. I didn't use any WSI resources to go to the doctor. I went on my own dime and I went to my doctor and I got a return to work from my doctor, who is an MD and who is familiar with my medical history. And so during her conversations with the nurse practitioner at HBC, the nurse practitioner said, well, I can't make that determination based on the limited records I have. I need something in writing. I need your medical records. And so firefighter Grant, after some back and forth with this person, said, well, can I get you something from my primary care physician? And ultimately, the HPC worker, a nurse practitioner, Nellie Adayak, I believe may even be the name, had said, well, if you get me a diagnosis and something explaining what is being done to treat it, I can look at that and I can make a determination. And that, I believe that a letter to that effect was generated on, oh boy, December 4th or December 6th. So we're still talking within 2 weeks of the accident. Firefighter Grant went back to her primary care physician, got a detailed letter explaining her diagnosis and what was going to be done, what was being done to manage it, and that there were no concerns. I believe it was the Friday that immediately following that last Human Performance Center meeting, she was given a letter of termination that was to be effective the following Monday. And I may be wrong, that may be December 9th was the Monday of the termination. So our argument to you, or arguments to you, will be that termination of employment due to that situation, A, was not appropriate. Okay. I don't think that others who are similarly situated would have been terminated for such things. Okay. B, we question, again, nobody wants to just jump to this, but why is she being treated differently? Is there an issue either with her sex? Okay. Rather not make that argument, but finally, C, probably more likely, is this an issue of retaliation? Firefighter Grant had made complaints about superiors at the fire hall in 2020 and 2023. It is believed that that caused some friction, and it is believed that that is why we have a response here that is disproportionate to what she is accused of. I don't even know that phrase. It seems difficult to imagine why someone would be terminated under these circumstances. And so one almost has to try to reach for things to explain why. And those seem to be the most reasonable explanations. Those are the arguments we would make to you. It's a difficult case. I thank you for your time and attention in advance.
I'll step over here. If you could have Officer Black come in. And then while we wait for the officer, so we've given out all sorts of documentation through the link. But for ease, it's not super fancy. I'm gonna hand out these packets that I'll be referring to while we have witness testimony.
These are copies of what we have.
Yeah, they're copies
Yeah,
of
the electronic.
exactly.
Thank you.
They're electronic copies or printout copies. Officer, you can come over here.
Okay.
But first, you know what? Brandy's gonna swear you in.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Okay, so can you say your name and there's the commission that we'll be talking to. So
Okay.
can you tell the commission your name, please?
My name is Officer Glant. First name's Kaden.
And what's your occupation?
I'm a police officer. It's my police department.
And how long have you been with the Bismarck Police Department?
Over a year.
What are your current duties?
I currently work as a patrol officer.
Okay. And on November 24th of last year, you were called to a crash at approximately 6:35 a.m.
I was.
And where was that?
Central Avenue.
Was that your fire station?
Yes, Fire Station 1.
Okay. And were you dispatched with another officer?
Yes, it was me and Officer Bennington.
And how did you both divide up your roles?
When we arrived on scene, Since it was close to our shift change, Officer Bennington took care of the crash report, and then I kind of did more of the investigating part of the crash.
Okay, so you were doing the investigation and reporting that information to Officer Bennington?
Correct.
And then he would just type that into the form for the crash, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and did he stayed outside, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And did you identify the driver?
I did.
And how did you do that?
When I arrived on scene, there was other firefighters there. I don't remember or recall their names, but they told me that the driver of the vehicle was inside. So when I came inside, then I saw the defendant there, and then
Okay, so she's, I know we're not,
Oh,
we're
yeah,
not
sorry.
independent. No, you're fine. So you saw Ms. Grand there, is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay, and where was she?
She was laying on the front of a fire truck.
Okay, the front bumper.
Yes,
Okay. And did you speak with her?
I did.
What was her condition?
She appeared to be, I guess you could say, consistent with someone that was involved in the crash. She wasn't quite out of it, but just kind of, no, as to me, it didn't seem like it was like 100% there. I guess you could say mentally, just kind of thinking through what everything that happened, but she was still coherent in what she was describing to me.
And did her coherence improve as you talked with her?
Yes,
Okay. And did the airbags deploy in her vehicle?
no,
Okay. Did you have any reason not to believe her explanation of the crash?
no,
So the Bismarck Police Department has a body camera, is that correct?
that's correct.
And the policy is to activate the body cam when you're investigating various incidents, is that right? And so was your body cam activated while you were investigating this crash?
Yes.
And you've watched that body cam, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm going to try to be technologically savvy and share a screen. So we have, I'm just gonna play part of the body cam. Oh, okay, it's behind us.
Fine.
Okay, well, that's fancy. I'm gonna get to time code 205. Now, officer, when you went in, you first went in and spoke with her, is that correct?
Yes,
Gathered some information, is that right?
Yep.
And then went out, is that right?
Yep.
And then went back in and spoke with her? Okay. We're not gonna watch the entire video, so we'll go to 2 minutes. Wow, now. Okay, so here we are. Is this you walking into the fire station?
that is me.
Is there a reason why we can't hear it?
Only
I think you're hearing off my. Okay, should I mute my, I don't know. Should I mute mine?
You hear sound.
No, no, no.
Start to the day, start to the day, start to the day. Nice, nice, nice. Yes, gotcha, gotcha. We're gonna get it tomorrow. We're gonna get it tomorrow. Second.
Only comment. I have one more section.
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Trying to think if I have anything for you or not. I don't think that I do, officer. Thank you.
I have. Not sure. Purpose of the video, but. Was there any discussion of litigation or extenuating circumstances or anything along those lines? I didn't hear any of it in there.
There was, I believe, I don't remember the exact verbiage I asked, but I asked kind of what happened. She mentioned she takes like high blood pressure pills that were in the vehicle, and then we also found inside the vehicle. Then she also described or mentioned that she lost consciousness at the wheel, which was the reason for the crash.
So what you're saying is that she indicated that, I'm sorry, and maybe I can address it, that there were issues of high blood pressure for which she was receiving medication, and any reference to whether or not that was pertinent to what happened or not?
I believe it could be pertinent due to there's no other vehicles involved in the crash. The roads were relatively normal or fine. There was no ice. I believe I asked her about if there was ice on the road or anything like that, and she said the roads were fine. So.
I realize you're a police officer, so you're probably not pharmacologically schooled,
Correct.
but I recall the reference had been made to blood pressure, but I couldn't hear it in the tape. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. Table, please. Lab, BLACT.
Raise your right hand. Do solemnly swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Okay, you can go ahead and go right here, right over there.
state your name, please?
Luke Teagle,
And it's Teagle, is that correct? And what is your current occupation?
battalion chief with the city of Bismarck.
And how long have you been with the city of Bismarck?
Almost 17 years.
And what are your current duties?
Our current duties is the shift supervisor, so maintaining staffing, overseeing all the equipment, all the personnel for the days that we're on duty.
How many people do you supervise?
Can be up to 29, and minimum of 19 typically.
Okay. And does that include former firefighter Samantha Grant?
Yes.
And have you supervised her before?
No, not in this fashion, no.
But you were her supervisor in October and November of this year, is that correct? Or last year?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And what were her duties as a firefighter?
She was responsible for just normal fireground activities, driving the engines, ladder trucks, any house duties that we have, maintenance of equipment, just everyday operations and things.
And so did she have to have special training to drive the fire equipment?
Yeah.
Do you need a special license for that?
No.
Okay. And so I'm sorry, I interrupted you about the training. There is special training for fire truck?
Yeah, so there's training that's ongoing, that individuals are continuing education, so to speak, in-house driver training that is performed, daily. We're doing street studies, or if we're doing pumping operations, hose operations, that truck operations in her case, taking care of operating the aerial truck and different things like that.
And the equipment that she was operating as a firefighter, what size are we talking about?
The aerial truck is like a 100-foot aerial. And as far as length, I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head.
Is it fair to say that they're thousands of pounds?
Oh, yes, yeah,
Okay.
easily.
And so you do need to have special skill and cognitive abilities to operate that machinery, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And are you familiar with the fire department standard operating guidelines?
One question. Is there any certification formally or informally that would have been granted or provided since she was in training that she had to do this? Is there any documentation that would say certified to do this or?
As far as when she was trained, it was more of an in-house. We do now have a certification process where our new operators go through a driver operator academy. And that's all provided in-house by our certified trainers as well.
But with 10 years of experience, then she had a presumptive kind of certification or her abilities to do that?
We don't have anything official. Like a certification that we sign off.
But there's
There's a
for lack
process
of a
that,
better term, there's an understanding that she has that ability
yes.
and confidence in that ability?
Yes, so it's a period of time as you become a probationary firefighter, you work through your firefighter 1, your firefighter 2 skills. Once you show that you're knowledgeable in those, your next steps are, if you're not an EMT, you move on to the EMT portion of things.
Okay.
Then you move on to the driver operator portion of things. And we do have some guidelines that they need to follow, but in order for a firefighter to move into that operator position, their officer at that time needs to essentially sign off on and say that these individuals, they're confident in their skills. They've demonstrated multiple times, either in training or on scenes, different scenarios that they've performed and been evaluated on by other firefighters, other driver operators, and their officer.
This had been done with
Yes.
Mrs. Grandin and satisfied persons in charge and supervisory roles. But okay, I wanted to make sure that there was.
Yep.
Because it wasn't like she walked in and said, I'd like to try that. Can I drive that one?
Right. Yeah. No, that's not the process.
So you're familiar with the standard operating guidelines of the fire department?
Yes.
And we call them, and you in your department call them SOGs.
Mhm.
So we'll refer to them as SOGs here.
Okay.
Okay. And how is a firefighter introduced to the SOGs?
Well, so currently, in the Recruit Academy, individuals are provided, documents. And in those documents explains where those SOGs are found. Now, previous to the academy, we are, as a new employee, there's certain things documents that we have to go through. And throughout your career, the SOGs are mentioned, reviewed, covered on our FI drive, and they're accessible at any time.
And so when an SOG is updated, how is a firefighter informed of the update?
Typically, that gets sent out whenever they're updated. Over a period of time, that gets sent out to the captain, and then those officers that are supposed to cover that with the individuals of their crews.
And it's fair to say that those SOGs are the written policies that you follow every day. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you refer to the SOGs informally throughout your practice or your career as a firefighter?
Yes.
Okay, and that's an everyday occurrence?
I wouldn't say every day, but it's fairly regular.
Okay.
Question? When that is presented, is there any documentation, like a signatory documentation that each firefighter has seen that SOG and has had an opportunity to understand and review it?
Yeah, so they're in our record management system. There's a documented form that whatever the SOG is or whatever the training record is that we are completing for that day, the officer fills out a training record, includes the individuals that were part of that training class, and then that gets submitted, and then the battalion chief then reviews that at the end of the shift, and then checks that off, and it's a completed training.
Question again, without too much detail and causing too much uproar. Is there any verification Officer Grant had completed that during the course of employment with you? I mean, can I go to her personnel file and see evidence that she had signed off on those things? Policy manual to begin with, and then any SOGs? I mean, I'm assuming that you have a paper trail for all of your officers.
Can I interrupt here? So that was gonna come later in a witness, but if you look at this
Sure.
orange tab, that would be the document that you're referring to. Okay?
Well, actually, it was hoping that there were documents. I mean, I would assume that there would be multiple SOGs, one of which would be a return to fitness, but yeah,
It would be all for all of the SOGs. Okay?
kind of a simple question.
So were you working on November 24th of last year?
Yes.
Okay. And did you see Samantha Grand after she crashed her vehicle? And how was it that you came to see her?
Brought to my attention that she had been involved in an incident. I was in my office and was notified, so I exited my office, went into the truck bay, and that's where I first saw her, was in the truck bay on the bumper of truck one.
And November 24th was a Sunday, is that correct?
That's correct.
And where had the crash occurred?
The crash had occurred just right in front of the station, just right down the street to the west.
Okay, so when you saw her, where were you initially?
I was in the station. So initially, as I stated, the first time I saw her she was already inside in the bay, sitting on the bumper of truck one.
Did you move closer to her?
I did.
Okay, did you see her condition?
I did.
And what was her demeanor when the first time that you saw her?
First time I saw her, she was laying down and was being cared for by other firefighters and just appeared to just be kind of lethargic a little bit. Was just stating that she was hot. That's all that I heard. And again, I wasn't getting directly involved. I was kind of observing from a little bit of a distance at that point because there was people around her.
Do you recall, so this was prior to the officer arriving, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm sorry, which officer?
the Officer Glott, the investigating officer. There's only one officer who went into the station. Do you recall if she said that she had been driving?
Yes.
do you recall if she said that she felt a hot flash coming on?
Yes,
Do you recall her saying, that it happened before?
yes, and she has stated that it happened before.
Okay. And do you recall her describing how the crash happened?
Just that as she was driving, she got hot and she started to roll down the windows to try to cool off.
And then did she describe the physics of the crash or how that happened, or was she able to describe it?
I did not do that.
Okay. So, she had firefighters around her, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you recall her asking about any sort of coverage for her for the crash?
There was a question that she had asked of, was this going to be covered? And at that time, I was unsure. And so that's when I stepped away, from the location of where she was at.
Okay, so first she thought it might be covered by a workers' comp issue, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and so you stepped away, and what did you do when you stepped away?
So when I stepped away, I went back into my office area and contacted one of our deputy chiefs to inform him of what had happened.
Okay, which deputy chief was that?
Mark.
Okay, so that was Deputy Chief Brooks Martin. Okay, you had a conversation with him,
Yes.
and what was the purpose of your conversation with Deputy Chief Martin?
The conversation was just to inform him what had gone on, kind of keep him in the loop. And then I just informed him that I would update him further when I had more information.
Okay, and how long did your phone call with the deputy chief last?
It was less than 3 minutes.
Okay, and what did you do after you hung up the phone with him?
After I hung up the phone with him, then I proceeded to go back out and just check on things and see how the situation was progressing.
Okay, and what was happening when you went back out there?
At that time, Sam was sitting up on the bumper, was much more with it, having a conversation with individuals. I believe at that time, the officer was there or had been notified, and Metro ambulance was there inside the bay talking with her.
Okay, and what was the plan? Where was Samantha Grand going to go after she left the?
At that time, all I had been told was that she had refused to care with Metro
Mhm.
and that an off-duty individual was taking her to be evaluated.
Okay, would you have allowed her to work her shift that day?
No,
Why not?
just due to the nature of the incident, just for, like I said, for her well-being, not understanding what really had happened, why it had happened. It's not anything that I've ever experienced before with myself or anybody. So I would just want her to get evaluated to make sure that she's fit to be able to work and that she's okay.
Okay, did you have contact with her later that day?
I sent an email that day to her, just following up with her.
Okay, and what did that email contain?
It was just information on FMLA paperwork, should she need it, and just inquiring how she's doing, hope she's doing okay, and believe that.
Okay, so just for the record too, we have BC Teagle's contact information. It would be in tab B, or what color is that? Yellow? No, lime green. Called Teagle, and that's the B references the folder, electronic folder that was sent to you. So that's in his conversation or his communication with her is in folder B. And under that tab. So did you hear back from her on the 24th?
I did not.
Did you hear back from her on Monday, November 25th?
I did not.
Okay, and did you have contact with her on Tuesday, November 26th?
Yes.
Okay, and what was the nature of that contact?
That was, if I'm gonna reference here, that was me referencing just to make sure that she had received the information, and that was done via text.
So you sent her text messages, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the text message that you're referencing, it's dated Tuesday, November 26th at 3:04 PM. And it says, "Hi, Sam, just checking," and then it follows from there. Okay. And, so she thanked you for checking in on her, right?
Mhm.
Okay. And so then she, I think on the next page, maybe, look at the. Did you have? She said she had a note from her doctor at some point, is that right?
Yes.
And then, you called her, is that correct? Okay, so at 4:01, there's an outgoing call to her.
Mhm.
What was discussed in that phone call?
On that phone call, she had stated that if, between the text message and it went to her work email, that the long story short, that she had gotten a note from her doctor. And then at that time, as I stated, I was on duty, so I had informed, Assistant Chief or Deputy Chief G, and then he had stated, or so that let him know what was going on. And then he informed me that, okay, to communicate with her. And so then that's when I had asked her, she had been at the touch base.
Okay. And so you had talked to Deputy Chief G.
Mhm.
So there's Deputy Chief Martin and Deputy Chief G, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so what was the nature of your conversation with Deputy Chief G regarding Samantha Grant?
It was just to inform him that I did have contact with her and that she had a doctor's note from her.
Okay, what did he say?
And so he said then, that or was requiring, did she or had she talked to, the HPC staff? And so then I wasn't sure at that time of whether she had or not. So then that was what that stuff was discussed in there.
Excuse me, just a point of everything. Deputy G is not his initial,
It's GEE. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Kind of a simple guy. I
I
got
know.
the alphabet now, but.
Names are hard.
the rest of them.
yeah. And so you had talked to him and he determined that she needed to go through the fit for duty process. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Can I back up just one more second?
Sure.
I apologize. These things kind of pop in my brain and I just blurt them out. You've been with the department for 17 years. You've been at accident scenes on numerous occasions. Is that right? Was there anything inconsistent with Ms. Grant's behavior that you might have observed at other accident scenes of people involved having a degree of fog or disorientation? Would that be consistent with what you've seen before, or was anything, was it out of the ordinary, or would it be usual if you had an individual who was a victim in an accident similar to that?
Yeah, and accidents, depending on vary.
Whole range of things, right?
Right,
Yeah.
but it is common, that a person could be confused or, kind of taken back by the actual incident. Yeah, and so they're not responding appropriately or as they normally.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't something that was extraordinary by behavior.
so did you inform Samantha Grand that she would need to go through the fit for duty process?
Yeah, so again, on that call, I informed Sam she would not need to report for work on December 1st. And would instead be placed on paid admin leave until she completed the evaluation process established by the city.
And what was her reaction to your conversation with her?
It was positive. I mean, she just responded positively, and like noted, and we joked about, she get an extra day off. And then the conversation that was pretty much it. It was a brief conversation, in a positive manner.
Okay, and so the screenshot indicated that phone call lasted about 5 minutes, is that right?
That's correct.
And at any point during your phone conversation with her, did you raise your voice?
No.
Did you have further contact with her on November 26th?
Yes.
Okay, and what was the nature of that contact?
So then later on, she had responded, and had asked why she needed to go to Ahmed, which is, where we get evaluated. And since it wasn't a work-related issue, and stated that she did not want her personal medical record to be tied to a work medical record.
Okay. Now, does the fact that she passed out, does that raise red flags for other firefighters?
Yes,
Okay. Does it matter that she was in a personal vehicle?
no, it raised flags regardless.
Okay. So after you got that question from her, what did you do with that information?
So then I inquired again with the deputy chiefs, and informed them of the question that she had had. And again, responded back, with a text to her explaining, due to the nature of the incident. And that was, something that was formulated from the deputy chiefs, and I was just a point of contact. And before it was sent, that was a text that they felt was appropriate so that it had everything in it, to be informative.
Okay, so this text that you're referring to from Tuesday, November 26th at 4:30? Okay. And so, who made the HPC appointment for her?
That was our deputy chief, Chad.
G, okay. And she was informed of the date and time of the appointment, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And your text message says something to the effect of HPC wanted her medical paperwork for the quote unquote recent findings.
Yeah, so, and what that was referring to is just that she had stated she had a note from her doctor, which I didn't inquire on. And so that's what the recent findings meant of whatever she had had.
Okay. And did you hear back from her?
Yeah,
Okay, and when was that?
let's see. That was on November 27th. That was when she was informed of the first HPC meeting. And then there was a brief gap, and I heard back from her then on December 2nd.
Okay. And we see that in the text string as well, right? And you've noted the December 2nd
Yep.
time or date stamp. And she said that she went to her own doctor and got the HPC assigned by her own doctor. Is that right? The
Yep.
paperwork.
That's correct.
And initially, what was your response?
I was happy. Like I said in the text, I said, perfect, good news. I said, I'll just make a copy of everything tomorrow and we'll see you in the morning.
Okay. And then did you have further conversations with the deputy chiefs?
I did.
Okay. And what happened there?
So I relayed the information to them. They saw the text, and then that was when they further informed me. So the fitness for duty. So then the next text came, which was explaining to her that the fitness for duty exam form needs to be signed and completed by the HPC staff. And for now, she was still on admin leave, and then another appointment or an appointment be made. And when I knew more, I would let her know that was going to be by Chad.
Okay. So she was told that she still had to go through HPC, is that right? And she was still on admin leave.
Yep.
And she had to participate in the fit for duty process. Is that right? Okay.
Question, it may be someplace else, but and I appreciate your thoroughness, but we've referred to fitness for duty and HPC and OC. Is there some summary of what that we as commissioners could understand what that means? I mean, I'm assuming that there may be from a fitness for duty thing, can she walk, talk, jump, breathe? I mean, physical, and I would imagine medical and things of that
And we
nature.
will have Chief Baseloop here and he
Okay,
will
I just-
talk about the fitness for duty
Kind of read ahead in
process.
the book a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that.
No, you're totally fine. Okay, and so you advised her of when her next appointment would be, is that right?
Yeah, that an appointment be made, and when I knew more, then I was gonna let her know when that appointment
Okay, and was an appointment made for?
was. Yes,
And you told her when the appointment was for?
yes.
And when was that appointment for?
That was on the December 3rd. I had sent her a text saying that it was for her to report in the morning at 9 a.m.
On December 4th,
Yeah, well, yeah,
the
yeah.
next day?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you hear from her after that?
That initial text was sent at 9:03 AM. I did not hear anything. Again, I was on duty that day, so, the deputy chiefs were following up with me. Then another text was sent at 1 PM on December 3rd, just confirming, that she received the message about her appointment time that was supposed to be the next day.
Okay,
And then I did hear back from her. She said yes.
okay. Did you have a phone call with her on December 4th?
I did, yes.
Okay, and that would be the last page of the section for BC TiVo. And that's, the bottom is dated 12/5, but relating to a phone call on December 4th. Okay, and so do you recall the conversation that you had with Samantha Grand on December 4th?
Yeah, so the conversation, again, a brief conversation, that's where she had informed me she had not completed the physical exam in HPC. She stated that she felt uncomfortable providing her medical records to HPC, which is Human Performance Center, as an accident in question did not occur while she was on duty. She also mentioned that she had scheduled a follow-up appointment with her own doctor instead.
Okay,
And then additionally, she just shared that she made phone calls to various individuals regarding the process, but expressed frustration that her questions were not being answered. And she noted that when she was asked about the process, that she was often met with being yelled at and no one seemed to know the proper steps. And I didn't inquire and she didn't give me any names further than that.
okay. So to your information, were you the sole point of contact from the fire department to her?
That I'm aware of this.
Okay, and that was planned, is that right?
Yeah.
And why was that?
Just so that there was no confusion, no information being distributed to Sam that was conflicting, that would have led her to believe one thing when somebody was thinking one thing, she was thinking another thing. So it was decided that I was going to be the sole contact, and all the information was going to go through me to her.
Okay, and you follow that plan, is that correct?
That's correct.
So you funneled the information from the deputy chiefs to Samantha Grand?
Correct.
Okay, I have no further questions.
May I offer this? We had just about an hour. I'm gonna offer a 5-minute recess
Okay,
so that those among us can do what we have to do. What is the chair may, but I'm gonna take Ed to the restroom. 5 minutes, please.
okay.
You can get, there's another set of restrooms.
No, it's right around the corner. I just didn't want to go into the sacred places for that.
I have the parking way over by the hotel.
Oh, really?
Yes, because this lot over here.
I just walked down from the church because it's just, yeah, it's just, time I park and walk, it's just a half a block or a block, it's just easier to come there.
You were a good shepherd.
Nope, Trinity, right now, yeah. Yeah, I don't think I'm nuts. Tell you what, sometimes at work, the thing just kicks my butt. I'm like, how can I lose an email? How can I communicate? Start our whole boiler system is different on. It's like, I never realized how good we had it. What a resources, we had our own IT person. And all it is, pick up the phone and say, help, this is what it's doing. Okay. It was huge. You hire people that work other agencies. And it was like, yeah, it goes through it. This is like, it was just like dumbfounded, like, yeah.
Password? I am with about that. Because we have a reason. Assigned to us, Kelly, Peter. Thank you for your difference to it.
All on the same trail as you were.
Out there for the lift, we're gonna go through there, they all kind of irritated if you go into a private office. That's fine. Hey,
Oh, I need my witness.
you ran away, you scared them off.
Yeah, I don't bother. Right?
I had a brief moment of clarity that brought another question when I walked out.
Were you talking about for it to be key? I don't think. Are you recording?
I think it's still recording.
Hmm?
It is still recording. I think it is. Yeah, there's that red dot up there.
Reference has been made, medical records, et cetera. Is there a requirement in the processes of the fire department that people who are on medication of various forms for various reasons are to report that? Especially if it might have a bearing on their performance.
That I'm not aware of. I just, know if it's a medical related issue, it's not common that would be confidential. So I wouldn't know.
Well, I know in certain situations where that is something that, especially when they're operating heavy equipment or items of that nature, that somebody who's on a medication that might have an influence on that. I don't know, but if it's not an SOGP or whatever.
So if I could turn, I'm gonna jump in if I could. So if you look
jump,
at
both feet.
SOG and it's in the pink tab. And it's SOG F1-1.8. And if you look at page 3 of 7,
Wait a minute.
okay,
Yeah, I've got 2 pages right there.
yeah, they're numbered at the top. I don't know why that is, but they're numbered up in this little,
3 of 7.
on the top right corner.
Got it.
Yep, and it says annual medical exam evaluation.
Okay.
And so Battalion Chief Teagle, this is what I believe Commissioner Kruger was referring to. That's the annual medical evaluation where firefighters are, as the term implies, evaluated medically annually.
Right.
Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, and that's the place where if there are changes in medication or a physical condition, the firefighter would report that to the medical provider.
That's correct.
Okay, and the fire department wouldn't necessarily know about those conditions, is that correct?
That's correct.
As long as the firefighter was evaluated fit for duty and the condition was ameliorated or controlled,
Correct.
it would be fine.
Correct.
Any other questions?
No, but it does answer then, and then I may wait. If this medical information has already been provided, because it implies down below all the medical information collected, if that's it's all confidential, I would presume that much of the medical information that was you were seeking to protect was already revealed. Is that, I don't know, accurate? Okay, I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, it's stated that you were hesitant about wanting medical information being put into the matter of record. I just was wondering if it wasn't already there. Thank you.
Well, I think we're gonna get into a dispute over that later.
Well, we love disputes.
Yeah, I know. That's what we live for. Okay, so I think think it's Mr. Vinge's.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to make sure I'm where we are in the process.
And thank you, Battalion Chief. So I have some questions for you, and I'll just dovetail into where we had left off. Whether a fire department employee or firefighter has a medical issue, you very likely wouldn't be aware of that. Is that correct? Because those are confidential medical records, right? Unless in the course of your employment or working together, they disclose it to you and you become aware of it that way, right?
Correct.
I'm assuming that if a firefighter or a fire department employee has high blood pressure, that's not something that would disqualify them from working as a firefighter, is it?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I guess I won't ask you personally, but I'm assuming that higher blood pressure is fairly common, especially as people get older. Is that fair to say?
I mean, again, I wouldn't know 100% whether or not.
Sure.
Everybody's different.
Sure. Understood. And that's a fair answer, right? So when Ms. Grant, now getting back to the accident on the 24th, I think that you had testified that Ms. Grant had said that she had concerns about this before, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I think that Ms. Grant never said that she had lost consciousness before. Is that correct?
She had stated, not directly to me, but with other individuals as I was standing there, that it's happened before and that it had happened at her house and she would feel it coming on and that she would lay down, call somebody and lay down.
Okay. And so Ms. Grant had never said that she had lost consciousness before then, correct? Based on what you've heard and what you've talked to us about, right?
At work, no.
Okay, but even what you just described to me, nowhere did you tell me that she had lost consciousness, correct?
Sure.
Okay, so in the past, Ms. Grant had felt something coming on and felt a need to lie down, correct? And I'm sorry, I have to ask if that's a yes or a no.
Oh, yes, that's what she stated.
Yeah, when people say or that's,
Makes sense.
you know, I don't have much training, but that's one of the things they beat into me is that I get yes or no answer. So you also, you may not have been involved in it, but you were aware that fire personnel had taken Ms. Grant's blood pressure at the scene, correct?
I didn't see it happen. That's typically something that we do though, for our medical calls.
No, that was firefighter Mork who did that, correct?
I didn't see it, so I'm not sure who did it.
Had you received information or reviewed documents suggesting that Ms. Grant's or firefighter Grant's blood pressure was about 144 over an unknown number?
I don't recall
No. Okay.
hearing any of that.
Okay. And I'm just curious, you know, again, as a firefighter of many years' experience, you'd be trained with some first responder type skills, correct? Some medical skills.
Yes.
And your training and experience, would you agree that normal, maybe not normal isn't the right word, ideal blood pressure readings about 120 over 80? Typically. Okay. And if I was to ask you, what would be dangerously high blood pressure based on your training and experience? What would you tell me that is?
That's subjective to each individual person. It all can make somebody do, or different, there's a lot of factors that go into it. So,
Battalion chief, you were trained as a battalion chief firefighter?
Yeah.
Are you certified EMT?
yeah,
Just want to know.
So are you telling me that 120 over 80 could be really bad under certain circumstances?
depends on the circumstances.
Okay. So what would be considered unhealthy blood pressure, unhealthy high blood pressure? When do we hit that threshold?
Again, it varies. We've seen cases of people that have higher numbers that are actually and appear to be normal and, 140 over something or what, it's just a case by case thing. We show up on scene, we evaluate the patient, we relay that information to a higher authority, which is the paramedics, and then the patient care is passed on to them.
Sure. Then based on your training and experience, would you more closely associate low blood pressure with a fainting episode?
Yeah.
And so higher level of blood pressure then would be less likely your training experience to be associated with a fainting episode, correct?
In theory, yes.
Okay. And you'd also agree that after a traumatic incident like a motor vehicle crash, would it be reasonable to expect that a person's blood pressure may be slightly elevated simply because of the experience?
Correct.
So then, moving on, I think that you had said, actually, let me back up. So that same day, when we're talking about the insurance coverage, okay, so firefighter Grand had been asked if she wanted to take the ambulance to the hospital, correct?
That's what it was.
And that's where the question came up. She had wondered whether she would be billed personally for the ambulance or if it would be a WSI thing. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so that was the question then that you were checking on to see if that would be covered by WSI or be something that's personal, right?
Correct.
And it was determined that because she was on her way to work, an ambulance trip would not be covered by WSI, right?
It just was stated to me that it wouldn't be covered because it was not.
Sure. And I just wanted to clarify that since we had talked about it. And that's ultimately, Ms. Grand, after receiving that information, she declined an ambulance ride to the hospital, correct?
Correct.
And then, you didn't direct her to go to the hospital after the incident, did you?
No.
You would have been fine with her going home.
Yeah, that was her choice.
Okay. And firefighter Grant took it upon herself to get a ride to the hospital from an off-duty firefighter, correct? So then you testified earlier that you said you didn't have any communication then with firefighter Grant until the following Tuesday, right? Okay. I think that, to be fair to you had sent an email with the FMLA information, but you hadn't received a response, right?
Right.
Okay. So then you've got some text messages from Tuesday, November 26th, and that would have been her first communication with you since the accident happened.
That I actually remember. I don't remember having a contact with her.
Okay. So I'm curious, and this isn't me trying to do a gotcha or anything, but I see that you text her, right? I'm looking at this text message, assuming it's yours. Hi, Sam. Just checking, see how you're doing. How did your appointment go? Okay, did you write that?
Yeah,
What appointment were you referring to?
I guess just that she had gone to the doctor.
Okay. I'm just curious how you knew she would have had an appointment.
Well,
That was an
I
assumption.
knew that was an assumption.
Okay. All right. So the very next text message in response, she says, "It's okay, because I will be back Sunday. I have my doc note." Right? Did she text that to you?
What day were you referring to on that one?
On November 26th, Tuesday. That's the part.
Yes, she did right now.
Okay, so she told you that she got her doctor's note and she will be back on Sunday. I'm assuming that's her next scheduled shift. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then your response to that, the first word, great. Is that correct?
Yep.
So not telling her that she's incorrect, not telling her that, no, wait, the procedure is this instead. It's great. It's approving what She just told you,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And it leads me into my question, I guess, so we're talking about a return to duty evaluation, or you've testified about a return to duty evaluation, correct?
Yes.
And are you, in your position and with your training and experience of the last 17 years, how many people, I don't need names, but how many firefighters have had to do these return to duty evaluations?
Again, that would be the medical side of things, and that's a confidential thing, nothing that I would know about. In my previous position as an officer, unless it was somebody that was directly under my supervision, I would have no knowledge of them having to do it on a different shift.
Okay, well, if you'd answered my question, the answer should be at least one, right? That would be firefighter Grant, if you're right.
Including her.
Okay, so my question then to you, and I'm just asking you, 17 years training experience, not necessarily what other people have done that you're not aware of, but how many people are you aware of who've had to do this return to duty evaluation?
Sam.
Okay,
Yeah.
17 years.
Yeah, I haven't had anybody that I've supervised before that has had to. I also haven't had any injuries or anything like that.
Sure. So it's fair to say then, in 17 years, if she is the only one who you are aware of who's had to do this, you're not familiar with the process of what goes into the return to duty evaluation, are you?
It's a city policy, so I know limited amount of some of that stuff.
Sure. But again, city policy, but we're talking about a medical evaluation. The city isn't the one conducting the evaluation, is it?
Well, I do know that we do have our annual evaluations at HPC, and that we do have to comply and be cleared from HPC. And I've never had an issue with that before.
So can I ask you you must do an annual evaluation yourself, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and without getting into specific personal information about you, can you tell me what it is that the doctor looks at during the annual evaluation?
Just, they look at blood pressure, height, weight, they take blood. I don't know what they're looking for and all that, but that's a typical physical. They do vision, some questionable things.
Talking about a medical exam, not a return to service, which would be a different
Yes.
protocol, right?
Yep. So you've been talking about the annual medical exam. And the reason that we're talking about this, you don't know what they do for the return to duty, correct? Return to duty exam.
Correct, because that's done down
Excuse me, are those, I'm under the impression from our earlier conversation testimony that those elements were stipulated in a SOG, is that right? Isn't there a standard operating guidelines that say what those things would be? Well, remembering may not be, but I mean, the document does exist, right?
Well,
Well, if I could, so the SOG F1-1.8 and the SOGs in general refer to that there's a National Fire Protection, it's NFPA.
number.
Right, so the national standards are referenced within the SOGs, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that information is provided to the medical
Have to say
provider.
it has to be able to lift this, drag that, climb stairways, 50 pounds of gear on their shoulders, whatever it is that they.
Right, that's outlined by the National Fire, yeah.
Okay, so there is that standard, which is the standard that would then be applied under the return to duty, or am I, I don't know, I'm asking if that's.
Yeah, and again, some of that information, I believe I have more information on. But
Okay, I'm not premature, I do that a lot.
well,
Not everything.
as long as we've been talking about the SOGs, which are in evidence, I would just note that you guys should have these. This again would be page 3 of 7 on F1-1.8. under the annual medical evaluation, which is what the battalion chief had been describing, that's been his experience, right? There is a reference to the NFPA, right? But then immediately underneath that, the return to duty medical evaluation has no reference.
Is that where I'm at?
Yeah.
It's three, right? I'm ready.
3 of 7, yeah. So you can see the first bullet point under annual medical evaluation does discuss the NFPA reference. But then the return to duty medical evaluation, which up to this point is an absolute mystery, has no reference to the NFPA.
Well, I'm going to disagree with that. So if you look at the last sentence of the second paragraph under return to duty medical evaluation, the physician must also evaluate any medication of the employees on in conjunction with the employee's job description and physical requirements of the job, which then would reference the NFPA and the annual.
There's room for argument, and I believe that the question was whether the return to duty medical evaluation specifically included the NFPA language, and I felt it was my duty to explain that that is not referenced there.
Okay, and then
Since it is in the record.
and if you also
If I go to the next page, it does talk about it.
and also, and then also page 1 of that, the last, the program called medical program, it references the WSI laws for the firefighters. And it's also the department's program as a whole is based on NFPA 1582. Standard on Comprehensive Occupational Medical Program for Fire Departments 2022 edition. So the NFPA is going to be the basis, and it's not going to have to be referenced in every section when the entirety of it is referenced under medical program in general.
I'm also, maybe I'm missing it, maybe I'm also talks about physical performance requirements is in there and also talks about.
Anyway, back to you, battalion chief. You eventually were directed by Deputy Chief G to tell firefighter Grand that she had to go in to the Human Performance Center, correct?
Right.
Okay. And just for a little bit of background, the city or the fire department or both have bounced between using a facility called Med and HPC in the last several years. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've used both.
Okay, and those are different facilities, correct?
Yes, they're not located in the same spot.
Okay. And so even in her communications by text with you, firefighter Grant even referred to it as getting an evaluation at Med, right?
Mhm.
And so that indicates even some confusion with the process. Is that fair to say?
I mean, I guess if she was confused, I would assume she would clarify that.
Sure. But these text messages and then your memoranda about these phone calls, these are the sole direction that she has as far as what she is supposed to be doing.
Along with the SOGs.
Okay, and then I'm looking at the SOG. The SOG at no point does it say that, well, you were to go to the Human Performance Center to have your blood drawn and to have your blood pressure taken, does it?
But that's an annual requirement that we have, which I think Deputy G will discuss too.
The reason that I'm asking you this in a very direct fashion is the SOGs don't say you got to go to the Human Performance Center, do they?
The whole process of the medical program illustrates kind of what we do every year.
Sure.
And if there's a change, we're notified of that. But this year was clearly identified that HPC was who we were going to.
And up until Deputy Chief G told you that this return to duty had to be done at HPC, your response to firefighter Grand saying that I have a doctor's note from my own doctor was great. In a later text, perfect, correct? So then the the appointments that firefighter Grand had scheduled for her at the Human Performance Center were on December 2nd and December 4th, correct?
I believe so, yes.
She went to both those appointments, didn't she?
I, again, wasn't there, I believe so. Again, Deputy G will have more of that information.
Then I can ask it a different way. You don't have any information indicating that firefighter Grant didn't go to those appointments, do you?
I do not.
Did you ever ask firefighter Grant for her documentation from her doctor?
No, directly other than what it had stated in there about her taking her medical records with her. I never had any discussion with her about anything related to medical.
Okay. I don't think I have any other questions. Thank you, Battalion Chief.
Okay, thank you.
So let's start at the beginning. So when she had her crash and then she was at the fire station, she said that she passed out, correct? Before she crashed it. So when she talks about it happening before, is it a reasonable inference on your part that she was stating that she had actually lost consciousness? Okay, and then you don't know what her blood pressure situation was, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and when you referenced an appointment, in your first text messages to her, was that referring to her visit to the emergency room?
Correct.
Okay. So the return to duty and fit for duty, we're using those interchangeably, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so you've worked at the fire department for 17 years, and other people have been injured on the job, is that correct?
Correct.
And they've gone through all sorts of medical rehab, is that correct?
Correct.
And if they were injured on the job, you may know about their injury and the process they went through to get back to work, is that correct?
Correct.
If something happened off duty, you wouldn't necessarily know about that, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then we get to this text message string where there was an alleged confusion. But if you look at December 2nd, where Samantha Grant says she got her HPC paper signed by her own doctor, that would imply he would read into that she knew that she needed to get get the work done at HPC, is that correct?
Correct.
And then you haven't had a lot of experience with return for duty or fit for duty events that happened off duty, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so we see perfect, so you were initially telling her that sounds good, right? And then the immediate text message is, nope, you have to do the fit for duty process, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and that was clearly communicated to Samantha Grant, is that correct? Got no further questions.
I have one. You're referring consistently to the medical report, medical examination, which was done. There's also a very significant part of that return to duty that's referred to as, I love it, an IPAT, which is an incumbent physical ability test. That also must be completed as part.
So yes.
Any of those things done. I'm sorry, I don't know if I should direct this to Brad, but did you participate in any type of incumbent physical ability test? Were you asked to do anything usually and customarily associated with the duties that you might perform as a firefighter? So you did not have any of that testing element completed with you by your physician. He didn't have a pack and didn't tell you to run up and down the there or anything like that. All he certified was that medically you were able to return to work. Is that accurate? I'm kind of a simple guy here, so I just when there were 4 parts, I thought maybe, well, one was part done, but there were a couple of other parts there. Okay.
I have nothing further.
One question. If Samantha would show up for work, she's got all the paperwork she says, how would you know that she is okay? Would your chief come up to you and saying she's clear to go on the shift? Like that?
Yes, if all of this stuff would have been, the process taken care of and submitted, then HPC would have cleared her to the chief. The chief would inform us that she would be cleared.
But you would not necessarily know all the medical facts
So,
that would go on. You just know that she can perform the duty.
And it would be presumptive that if these things were done, especially, I'm assuming that the big concern about a firefighter is the firefighter's ability to perform their usual and customary functions, which is not only driving heavy equipment, but other things associated with carrying hoses and running into fires, and climbing ladders and things like that. That you would want to be able to rely on that among all your men and women under your command being able to do that. It would be prudent, I would assume.
yes.
The commissioner's questions raised just a couple of questions for me, if I may. So you don't know what goes into the Human Performance Center return to duty evaluation, do you?
I don't work for them, so no.
Yeah. And you don't know whether they do any physical testing of any kind, correct?
Correct.
Now, are you aware that firefighter Grand had already had her annual duty physical prior to this incident?
Yes, our ship had it already.
That was actually in November of 2024,
I
correct?
believe so, yeah.
And she had no issues during that physical, the annual physical, correct?
I would know that.
Well, if there were issues, would you have been alerted to that?
That medical staff would have contacted our chiefs and alerted them.
And then it would have trickled down and you would have had to deal with it, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and there were no issues that were brought to your attention?
Correct.
Okay. And then training experience, career-wise, how many firefighters have you supervised?
Over the years,
Yes, sir.
tough number to say, I don't know. I mean, I was a captain for 13 years.
And I don't expect scientific certainty, just an approximate is fine with me.
Oh. 100.
Okay, thank you, sir. I don't have any other questions.
I have a question, and if this isn't the right person to ask, you need to let me know if it's gonna come up later. So firefighter Grand has her annual physical, medical testing. And let's say a week later, she finds out she has high blood pressure, which couldn't be troublesome on the job. Is she required to tell you that in between that next annual exam? Or does that just float for a year and it comes out when the next annual exam?
And that would probably be the other chiefs coming in here to discuss some of that.
I do have a question for you real quick. So the annual physical and medical exam that every firefighter goes through, right? So if there's a change in a firefighter's physical or medical condition, that's a self-report. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if they don't disclose everything to the medical provider, there's no way for that medical provider to necessarily know and report back to the fire department.
That's correct.
I've got no further questions. We good? Okay.
We're happy.
Can we have Deputy Chief G, please?
It will be done at 3 p.m.
You can come right, you're gonna get sworn in
Oh,
or sworn out.
that's the way it works.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Hello,
Can you please state your name?
Ed G.E.
And how long have you been with well, I'm assuming you've been with the Bismarck Fire Department for a number of years.
Yes,
How many years is that?
it'll be 29 in March 15th.
Okay. So, what are your current duties as Deputy Chief?
Currently, I am in charge of Fire Marshal's Division, basically we cross over a little bit. Understand duties sometimes, but in charge of facilities, things like that, in the fire department.
Okay,
And I do the physicals and HR paperwork. And things.
okay, so you're familiar with the SOGs regarding the medical evaluations of firefighters. And that would include the people who are applying to be firefighters with the fire department and incumbents
Yes.
and any ongoing issues that the incumbent firefighter may have.
True.
And that's all contained within the SOG. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And we've had this question. So can you explain the fit for duty that we also call, or the SOG also calls return to duty? Can you explain briefly that process for the commission?
Sure. If there's a condition or something that's happened significant enough that quite possibly could hinder their duties, keep them from being able to perform the duties, we'd like to have somebody that's versed in NFPA 1582. That's where we get our physicals from. That's
I'm gonna slow you down right there. Can you explain NFPA 1582?
it's the standard that we follow for physicals and
This initial stand for what? National Firefighter?
Protection Agency, National Fire Protection Agency, yeah. That's the standard for medical issues.
Okay, so that's standard for departments across the country, is that correct? And that's the standard that the Bismarck Fire Department uses. And is that also related to ACMED or HPC?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
and they're trained in that,
yes.
okay. And the fire department contracts with them to do those evaluations using those standards, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so even if the individual standard within the NFPA 1582 isn't referenced in the individual SOG, it underlies the entire medical program. Is that correct within the fire department? Are firefighters aware of that?
I would think, yes.
How would they become aware of that?
So the NFPA, we use a lot of the NFPA standards, so I'm assuming that that's what,
It's common within the industry,
yes,
not just the medical.
that's correct.
Okay. So there's other NFPA titles that are relevant to your job.
Yes.
Would the entirety of NFPA be relevant to your job?
For the most part, it depends on what our part that can function within. I mean, some of the stuff is financially not possible, but they require us to have certain trucks and a certain amount of people to serve the citizens of Bismarck per capita. And it's just not feasible on some of those with the NFPA standards.
Okay. So when we have someone doing return to duty, if there's something that happened on the job, say somebody hurt a knee or a back, they would go through the process. Is that correct?
There's a return to duty form that they fill out. If it's something that's just orthopedic, let's say, they can see an orthopedic doctor, and if they say they need 6 weeks on light duty or whatever, then that's what we follow.
And is that coordinated with whatever provider that you're using?
Not all the time, no.
Okay. And so if something happens off duty, say somebody, I don't know, there was an accident or they tripped and broke a leg while they were out duck hunting, that would also follow the medical evaluation process. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And are you familiar with every requirement of the return for duty and or NFPA medical evaluation standard?
Couldn't tell you
Right.
verbatim, no.
So, but you rely on the HPC to know that information?
Yes,
Okay.
that's how we contract. That's able to study it.
And without saying names, have there been other firefighters go through the fit for duty or return for duty process?
Yes,
Okay,
there's been 2 that I know of recently.
recently. But over the term of your 29-year career, have you known about other firefighters doing the fit for duty, return for duty process?
I suppose if I wasn't in the position that I'm in, I would.
And Is that because the information is kept confidential? Okay. And so unless you're directly supervising someone, you wouldn't necessarily know if someone on a different shift was going through the return for duty or fit for duty process. But it's relatively common, is that right?
Yes, depending on circumstances.
Okay.
Question. You handle any of the WSI activities come through your office?
To a certain extent, yes. With HIPAA and everything in HR nowadays, we have the employee fill out the documents for certain items like that.
Identifying an employee, can you give me approximately the number of WSI claims that come through on a 1 month, 6 month, year basis through the department? Are they significant or more than 5?
I would say, yeah, 5
More
to
than
5 to 10 a month or less. 5. I'd
So
say
we're talking 60 to 100 a year.
probably.
It's not a particularly accident-free experience, is that right?
Okay.
Not all of them seek medical attention.
I'm sure,
There's an incident report and a
sure.
first report of.
But I mean,
Yeah,
my
yes,
point is
Yes.
that it
yes,
is a dangerous job.
yes, that's correct.
And so there's a spectrum, would you agree? So if someone just stubbed a toe, that's not necessarily gonna mean that they have to go to HPC,
No,
right? But if someone, say, passes out while driving a vehicle and crashes, that's gonna raise some red flags. Would you agree with that? Okay. Okay, so speaking of crashing, did you hear about Samantha Graham's crash? Okay, and how did you find out about it?
you see Martin, let me know Monday morning.
Okay, that would be the next day after the crash? Okay. So based upon the information that you were provided, what was your decision?
I thought that a bit of a duty was needed at this point in time.
Why?
Because of the nature of the incident and the statements that were made that it wasn't a single. And there was things that happened prior to this as well, according to the statement.
Okay, so the statement that you were reported to you that Samantha Graham had made.
That's correct.
Okay. And so that, in your mind, in your experience, rose to the level of requiring a fit for duty or return for duty process. Okay. Did you have direct contact with Samantha Grant?
No.
Okay. And why not?
She was off at the time.
Okay. Did you, within the fire department administration, determine that one person would have contact with her?
It's the cleanest way to do it, so there's no confusion with sending separate.
Okay. So what was your role in the fit for duty process?
I was the contact with HPC.
Is that part of your normal everyday duties?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, with the medical and eventually physicals and other things, yes, and new hires and things like that, that's what I would do. Yes.
Okay, so let's talk briefly about this annual exam. So every firefighter has to go through the annual exam, right, with HP, and now it's HPC.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And so when they are reporting to the medical provider with HPC, it's a self-report. So if they are truthful, they're telling everything to the provider. But if they're not disclosing everything, the provider doesn't really have a way of knowing.
That would be correct.
Okay. So you made an appointment first for her, when?
I believe that would be the 2nd of December, it would have been the first appointment. I have to look.
Okay, and were you aware that she said that she had a note from her own doctor clearing her for duty?
I think that's, I don't know when that came in, to be honest with you, if it was part of the text, but I think we had stated that she had to go through the HPC with our physician that's first in the.
Okay. And so you got communication back from the HPC staff, is that correct? Okay. And this is under tab, it's the yellow tab where it says G, and then B again refers to the folder. So I'm going to put this in front of you, okay? So you got initially an email from Nelia Dyak, who is the nurse practitioner, one of the practitioners there, right, for Niders?
Yes, she's the one that does.
And this was referring to December, let me turn to. This is the first one. It'll be the third. Oh, do we need to take a break?
I'll be right back.
Okay, we'll just take a break.
Minutes.
Okay, I need to stand up. And sit to one. Do you want to think? Jason?
Cabinet.
Back there?
The sink.
About, right by the sink?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, the large double doors, there's all over there. Yep. Anyone else? Go ahead and put a bunch out there just for the table. Help so. Thank you.
Should I bring my power cord? Here's my either. Oh, that way. Oh, gee.
Visual unlock. Thank you. Appreciate your patience.
Okay, so.
In session.
Thank you. So if we look at the letter dated 12/2, that's from the provider. Did this letter raise any concerns to you?
Yes.
What were those?
She can follow through with the process.
So based upon, and we're not gonna, I mean, everybody can read this, we don't need it right now. So based upon this information, what did you do then?
I think had, 9 chief legal come back and say that we need her to complete the process.
Okay, and you gave her a second chance and made a separate appointment, is that correct?
We notified her that we would attempt to make another appointment. That appointment was made, I don't know if it was the following day or the next, but for 9 o'clock in the morning.
On December 4th, in the morning, is that right? Okay, and then we got an email. So is it my understanding that she had an appointment made for the morning of the 4th, but she changed that appointment to the afternoon? Okay. And then you got a letter from, again, the provider on December 4th in the afternoon. And what did that information relay to you?
The same outcome, basically. Failure to comply.
Okay. Now, was Samantha Grand was she supposed to make another appointment with HPC on December 5th? Is that correct?
reading the document, absolutely.
Right, and then we're not gonna, everybody can read that and, but she was supposed to make one for the 5th and you got information that she did not make one for the 5th. Okay. And so what did that mean to you when she refused to make the appointment on the 5th?
Follow through with the process. There was,
Okay, and then you also received information from the provider regarding her annual physical that happened earlier in November.
that's correct, 6th of November, where's physicals? She took her physical.
Okay, and at that point, she had never mentioned anything about fainting to the provider, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and so based upon this information, what did you do with all of this? And that would include the chief, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Anything else about this interaction that the commission needs to be aware of?
I mean, you read through the documents from the medical provider, you can see what the process was or the outcome was for it. Yeah. that's-
And so in your career as a supervisor, have you ever had an employee refuse to participate in the return to duty or fit to duty process? Okay. Got no further questions.
Great.
How long have you been doing this? So,
In my position now?
Yes.
It's been 3 or 4 years now, I believe. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for being here, Deputy Chief.
I did.
Oh.
I just have a. Talked about her annual physical, you made it a point of being, she had an annual physical in November. But also indicated that she failed to disclose any history during that time. I mean, that's
Fainting, there is a difference.
history of high blood pressure.
And I was going to
medication.
ask because I believe that was disclosed. High blood pressure was disclosed. Yep, and we have the, that, you anticipated a question I was going to ask the witness, and that was disclosed.
But I didn't go to law school.
Well,
I didn't mean to.
you don't
speak
need to anymore if you're in the legislature.
No, I stayed at Holiday Inn. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. All right, so one of the responses that you had given in your testimony earlier jumped out at me right off the bat. You were asked if the return to duty evaluations were always done through a provider you were using, and you said no, they weren't always, right? So that tells me that other physicians are able to make these determinations, correct?
Like I stated, for like a orthopedics type, or somebody has a knee surgery or something like that.
Sure. So the person who you were corresponding with, Nelia Dyack, does that name sound familiar to you?
Yep.
Hey, what kind of a doctor is she?
She's a nurse practitioner.
Okay, nurse practitioner. So, you know, and I understand we all have our specialties. So do you know what nurse practitioner Nelia Dyack, what her specialty is?
Okay, assuming it would be, since we're contracting with her, something she's able to do NFPA 1582.
Okay. All right. And that's an assumption you had just said, right? So you would agree that medical doctors, of course, have a loftier title, right, than a nurse practitioner. They would outrank them in the area of medicine, correct? In the practice of medicine. In theory, I suppose. I know it sounds really elitist of me to just come right out and say it, but you know, it needs to be said. So do you know then, during the return to duty physical, that this Nelia Dyack would be doing, do you know, do you have any idea what kind of exam she would be conducting?
The physical, the standard physical with background in NFPA 1582.
Okay, so that's your belief, is that Nelia Dyack would be performing an actual physical examination? That's your belief?
Yeah, but depending on age, you get cardiology or patches and all that, EKGs and all those kind of things.
Okay, Did Nelia Dyak tell you that?
No, that's what we contract with. That's what a form I sent over is all of these tests that they have to do and complete. That's what we're paying for.
Sure. So would it surprise you if Nelia Dyak told firefighter Grant that all she wanted was medical records to look at? Would that surprise you based on what you've just told me?
For what, the annual physical exam?
For the return to duty.
That's, I thought you were talking about the annual physical exam.
Okay, well, we've been, so what happens at the return to duty?
Return to duty, I would hope they dig in on what we asked them to dig in on, the required or whatever we thought the problem.
So you believe that actual medical work and examination would be conducted during that?
If they knew what to examine.
Okay. And so what would a nurse practitioner examine in a case?
I'm not a nurse.
You don't know. And so would it surprise you if a person didn't conduct an exam at all, but just wanted documents
To get started, maybe, I have no idea. I don't know that. I cannot answer that.
So, the email that has been shared with us, okay, and for the commissioners and everyone's benefit, and I guess yours as well, Deputy Chief. I want to make sure that I have it, yeah. So you read those emails, correct? Okay, so I'm looking at the sheet that has the yellow sticky tab marked on it, GB. See at the bottom of that sheet, there's an email from Nelia Dyak sent to you on December 4th, 2024. Correct?
That's good.
Okay, and you read that email. That's correct. Okay, then moving on to the next page, the very last paragraph.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to just read from this for everyone's benefit. I, and this is Nelia Dyak, told her, this is firefighter Grant, I would need a medical diagnosis and what is being done to address it. I have typed up a letter that she said she would bring to her physician tomorrow. And then she said she will call and make an appointment here with me tomorrow. Okay, now she did state that she was still not sure if she wanted to disclose her medical diagnosis. Did I read that accurately? Okay, so let's take a look here. I have it marked. Did you happen to see the letter that was written by Nelia Dyak?
The letter.
That was given to Samantha Grant? I mean,
No,
without,
no
that
idea.
wasn't something that you would be. All right, so but I will just mark this as Grand 1. It's brief. Everybody here can take a look at it. Copies can be made if need be, but I'm handing that to you. It's been marked as Grand 1. Does that appear to be a letter written by Nelia Dyak? Okay. And is that a letter that Samantha Grant is to take to her healthcare provider to get a diagnosis and to get the treatment information?
Return to Nelia here.
And so that appears to be what Nelia Dyak wanted, right? Something from the doctor, Samantha Grant's choosing to get her that information. Is that correct?
I have no idea, sir.
Okay,
I
well,
wasn't there.
do you have any reason to doubt the authenticity of that letter?
No one.
Okay, and that appears to be what's being requested in it, right?
The way I read this letter is that there was no cooperation, so the only way she could get cooperation was to get the information from her doctor.
Well, if a person is seeking records, firefighter Grant can't just take those up on the spot, can't
That's
they?
why request them from the doctor.
Right? And so, if firefighter Grant was getting that information from her doctor to provide to HPC, then she would have been in compliance, correct?
If she would, if, depends on how, okay, you would have read the documents, I guess. I don't know. I can't answer for that.
Sure. So that email to you was sent on December 4th after the afternoon appointment that Samantha Grant had with Nelia Dyak that day, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You've been to the doctor, haven't you?
This is kind of a rhetorical question. If you wanted to talk to your doctor, get your doctor on the phone. If I was to give you 2 hours or even 24 hours to do it, could you promise me on the threat of losing your job that you'd be able to?
According to the letter, it says she could.
No, I'm asking you.
I can't answer that because I haven't tried to get medical stuff to my doctor.
And perhaps these are rhetorical questions, but I'm illustrating a point, right?
Okay.
So this is asking, so Samantha Grand sounds like, according to that email from Nelia Dyack, she was gonna try the very next day to have this information from her doctor.
That's the
Right?
way,
That's the way that it looks.
that's the way it's read, yeah.
And that was the 4th. That was a Wednesday. It was the 6th, a Friday, that firefighter Grand was given a letter telling her that her job was over on the 9th, the following Monday, correct?
I believe so.
Okay.
I'd have to look.
And you yourself, you didn't ask firefighter Grand if she was gonna be getting the information that was discussed in the email you got from Nelia Dyack, correct? Matter of fact, even from what we've received, are you or anybody who's asked if she was getting that information?
I assume that she was in contact with the doctor and she was gonna call HPC again, according to this letter. That's what I know.
Within the span of 24 hours. Go ahead, that was.
It wasn't the span of 24 hours. 3 different appointments. Potentially 3 different appointments.
So there was an appointment on the 2nd. There was an appointment on the 4th.
And supposed to be an appointment on the 5th.
Okay, and you weren't present during firefighter Grand's meetings with Nelia Dyack, were you? Okay, and so clearly, if firefighter Grand was concerned about her personal information and she wanted to get the medical information needed to Nelia Dyack, you would have no way of knowing, would you?
Unless they contact.
So I'm curious, is in the 2 recent return to duty evaluations that you are aware of, I'm curious if you just happen to know this information off the top of your head. When was the what was the time frame of compliance in those cases? Was it less than 2 weeks?
I don't recall.
Was it less than a year?
Don't recall, sir. It was much less than.
Well, you know, I would note based on the city ordinance that the Civil Service Commission has the ability to investigate further than just this hearing. And so would the period of time that was given to firefighter Grand be different than the period of time that was given to those 2 other individuals who you referenced or who you mentioned, made note of?
I can't imagine.
Imagine. Okay. I'm just curious, are those individuals male or female?
They were both men.
Now, are you aware of an incident where a male firefighter on duty at a structure fire last either late summer or early fall had issues, I think lightheadedness, fainting, or some other problem, and Metro Ambulance had to respond to evaluate the person while that person was on call?
I can't answer that. I was not there.
Okay, you can't answer it because you weren't there, but you, as the deputy chief who's in charge of physicals and return to duty and things of that nature, had you heard of it? Okay, you heard of it. But clearly, you must not have issued a return to duty physical request in that instance, have you?
No.
Okay. So a situation where the metro ambulance workers reported to a structure fire to attend to a firefighter.
It's
who
not
was
why
on
they
duty.
reported.
I'm sorry?
That's not why they reported to the fire, sir, at all.
Okay.
They weren't, they're there during the whole entire event, in general.
All right, and I appreciate you correcting me, because if I'm acting on assumptions, I need to be corrected. So are you aware of a person who, a Bismarck Fire Department employee who had to be cardioverted at one point within the last couple of years?
I'm sorry, the question, I couldn't.
Well, okay, so are you familiar, this was new terminology to me, but are you familiar with the terminology cardioverted? Okay, are you familiar with situations where people can have irregular heartbeats that can potentially be fatal?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe I
And,
know.
okay, you think I know, you think that you don't want to, okay. This person actually had to have a defibrillator, right, one of the shocking devices attached to him, and he had to be jolted at basically the maximum output. But that was, so, okay, without really all of those details, this person had to be defibrillated to get the heartbeat back to regular, correct?
No, that's sir.
Okay, but you're aware of the person I'm speaking of?
Yes, sir.
Did that person, that person wrote a letter to the fire department kind of describing his experience, didn't he?
I believe so.
Okay. And so obviously you're aware of him. Were you a deputy chief at that time?
I think so.
Were you also in charge of physicals and the return to duty?
Potentially, yes.
You know, did that individual have to go through the return to duty physical process?
I believe he did go through a process. I don't know what it was. I can't, his own doctor, I suppose.
So he went to his own doctor and his own doctor cleared him to come back.
I don't recall. I don't know.
Okay.
I was,
So if he was allowed to go to his own doctor and his own doctor would clear him to come back, why would the process be different for firefighter Grand?
different circumstances.
What are those?
Those,
Yes.
the risk, the liability to the city, getting behind a vehicle, a 90,000-pound truck and passing out, I guess. That would be the one.
Okay.
With a history,
So somebody losing consciousness versus somebody who may have had to have been defibrillated just to get their heartbeat back to regular. Somebody who is facing a life-threatening condition. Those are the circumstances you would identify as being different.
I can't. So,
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Chief, Deputy Chief, in your role as Deputy Chief, have you had any formal or informal like training in the terminologies and circumstances? Have you gone to any classes or?
EMT class.
EMT. But you've not taken any advanced medical terminology now and have no other,
No, sir.
other than a Reader's Digest, right?
So Deputy Chief, so the fit for duty can take all sorts of forms, is that correct? And when you require a firefighter to go through the fit for duty, return to duty, it can take different processes. But they have to follow that process, is that correct?
That's correct.
And it could be, and you don't know that the facts, alleged facts that Mr. Vinci was relaying to you about this other firefighter. Okay, so what we're here for is Samantha Grant, is that right? Okay. And when Nelia Dyack wants the medical background, that seems a reasonable starting point. And you don't know, because of the various rules regarding medical history, what Nelia's plan was once she received that information. Okay. But as far as you know, she never did receive that information.
No.
Okay. And the information that you did receive was that Samantha Grant did have that information. It just didn't provide it.
At the hearing, that's what we heard, that she might have had the documentation. I don't know.
Okay. I've got no further questions.
Just to piggyback really quick, when you say that's fire, you heard firefighter Grand had that information at the hearing. Just to clarify, we had an informal meeting with the city. This is after firefighter Grant's termination, correct? And we were told at the conclusion of that hearing that the decision to terminate her was final, that there was no, that decision was not being changed. Thank you.
I've got nothing further if anyone else. No? Okay. And then can we get basically
Can't see.
I can have just one.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Okay. Can you state your name for the record, please?
On Facebook,
And your occupation?
fire chief,
And how long have you been with the Bismarck Fire Department?
6 years,
And how long have you been the chief?
6 years.
So let's turn to, we've talked a bit about this, the standard operating guidelines or SOGs within the fire department. Okay. And though, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the SOGs are modeled after the National Fire Protection Agents, or National Fire Protection Association guidelines. Is that right?
The NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, is a standard of care, and a lot of the SOGs do follow that guidance, yes.
And specifically regarding the medical portion, that also that is underlaid by the NFPA 1582, is that right? Okay. And firefighters are aware of the SOGs, is that correct? And how are they made aware of those?
Upon hire, there's a process to acknowledge review process. As SOGs are modified, as they're added, there's communication that moves to staff that they have been updated. Oftentimes, the captain with fire station will go through those, but they're available to all employees for review.
Okay. And in 2016, the firefighters reviewed the SOGs, is that correct? Okay, and so I'm gonna turn everybody's attention to, I'm gonna call, I guess that's orange. Bright orange tab called signed SOG, and again, it's in folder B. And that's Samantha Grand's signature, is that correct? Correct. And also contains language that if there's changes to the SOGs, that they're responsible for knowing those, is that right? Okay. And so the fire department has a program, return for duty or fit for duty, right? And we use those terms interchangeably, is that correct? Okay. And does that include conditions that occur off duty as well as on duty?
Yes, a situation once that information is learned, and we want to ensure the safety of our firefighters, those that we serve, and fellow firefighters. So if there's information that is there, that would have gone.
And other firefighters have gone through the fit for duty process, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And is that information publicized to the department? Why not?
That's personnel information, medical, confidential.
And you are aware of Samantha Grand's crash, is that correct? Okay. Were you involved in the fit for duty decision for Samantha Grand?
My involvement would have been a collection of the information from the deputy chiefs and my consultation with City Hall, which would have included human resources, review the information and the determination was that it's clear for fitness for duty.
Now, we've heard other situations where other firefighters may have been injured, say orthopedically, like their knee or back or something, and they are able to go to their own doctor for clearance. Is there, do you see the difference between that and Samantha Grand's when you require her to go through HPC?
And there are some situations where it's clear, it's injury and rehabilitation. And there's something that is unclear if it fits the NFPA 1582 and the duties that are listed. That's the purpose of the fitness for duty, to ensure that person will be safe doing their job.
Okay, so if a person injures a knee and rehabs that knee, that's a clear conclusion to that injury, is that correct?
So that would be fitness for duty.
Okay, so if someone passes out while driving a vehicle, that's not necessarily clear as to the cause of that. Okay, and would you have concerns if that firefighter who crashed a car is driving a fire truck?
Yes, I would.
Okay, and why is that?
Number of reasons. One would be for the safety of that firefighter, the safety of the other firefighters, the safety of the public, the duties that we have, that we're tasked to do to provide emergency rescue services to the rest of the community. So yes, it would be.
Were you aware, or did you become aware of Samantha Grand's cooperation or lack thereof with the return for duty process?
I was made aware.
And how did you become aware of that?
Of the process, I was briefed by staff, and throughout that process, we consulted with human resources, legal, and we evaluated the information. That's where I learned the lack of cooperation.
Did that concern you? Why?
We're putting forth our process to ensure that this person can return to duty in a safe manner. And our expectation, as well as our standards, are that this information be disclosed and there be everything be trustworthy, honest.
So trustworthy, did you think that she was not being trustworthy and honest?
And the process is not being followed. There is a lack of cooperation. There were a couple situations where trust was mentioned because there were statements that were made that was part of one of the reasons for dismissal, that there were statements that we didn't true.
And what were those statements?
But it's referenced that someone was contacted by Sam that was higher up at the station and stated that the person informed her that the position info that she had would suffice for return to duty. Oh, I haven't heard of who that person might be. There was a statement to the HR director that nobody had told her that she was on administrative leave. That wasn't true. That Battalion Chief Teagle did that. Stated to Battalion Chief Teagle that everybody is yelling at her. That was not true. The only persons I believe that were speaking to the firefighter were Battalion Chief Teagle and HR Director Schmidt.
So were you aware that initially, PC Teagle, that the medical doctor, the note that she was going to provide was sufficient?
Can you repeat that, please?
So were you aware that initially, Battalion Chief Teagle said or told her in a text that a physician's note would be sufficient?
It's my understanding that there was communication from Teagle to Sam that said, based on the initial info he had, that we basically got what we need, but he corrected that.
And you corrected that after conversations with the deputy chiefs and provided that information immediately to Samantha Grand, is that right? Okay. And so you use various factors to base your decision to terminate, is that correct? Okay, and I'm going to point everybody's attention to the dark blue tab at the bottom that says letter E. And that's again folder E, but this is the termination letter that you wrote to Samantha Grant. Is that correct? Okay. And you don't need to read this. Everybody is capable of reading, and I believe they have read it. And so was the termination process followed in this case? And then you actually did have an informal hearing with her on the 9th. Is that correct?
The 9th.
Yeah, so the 6th was a Friday, and that's when she was provided the letter. And then the next Monday, there was an informal hearing where she was present with her attorney and the HR director and yourself.
That's correct.
Okay. Anything else about this process that the commission needs to be aware of?
This is intended to ensure safety and for the firefighters involved, those that we serve, and the rest of our staff, so it's for good purposes.
I have no further questions.
Chief, thank you. Your service, by the, how many, 26 years?
Yes, sir.
You started out as a chief.
Sir.
And have much upward mobility. Getting, how many sworn officers do you have in your companion group?
In our department, we have 91 personnel.
91 lives. They all take an oath. They all are treated in the best you are able to in a universal fashion.
All right. Hey, Mr. Kruger, the oath is actually a law enforcement type oath, so our persons are not sworn, as you say, in accordance or equal to law.
Comparable commitment of their lives and willingness to do that.
Right.
It's not an idle thing that they do when they say, as police officers, you tend to run towards fires. I'm trying to suggest that it's a fairly important thing to you and to your officers that regardless, you are trying to take care of people, and you do things like return to duty and things of this nature because lives depend on it. And lives have been lost in the fire department in the last 26 years.
Are you referring, sir, to the line of duty deaths?
Line of duty officers,
Certainly, we have not had a line of duty death.
you get a pretty good track record there.
We've had deaths that were that occurred, persons were employed, but
Right, I understand that, but I'm just trying to say to you that you strive to have that kind of a record.
Sir.
I applaud you. It's a challenge. And point is, I guess, is that one of the things that comes to my mind is you have to establish standards that allow for that so that if someone has a circumstance that might be, it's not just necessarily for them. It's for the officers around them. If they're driving a vehicle or entering that fire or aiding or rendering aid and assistance to a citizen or to another firefighter. That's why you have the standards that you have. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And I want that on the record. You guys do good work.
Okay. All right, thank you, Chief. Thanks for being here. So I'm assuming you're very familiar with the SOGs that we've been talking about, correct? Okay, and you're also aware that when an individual, a firefighter has performance issues, and that firefighter has not had any other previous performance issues, the SOG usually calls for that person not to be terminated. Is that correct? That they're put on a performance plan or an improvement plan?
That may be a path, but depends on the situation. So
You're saying, no, that doesn't exist, or no, that doesn't apply here?
what I meant to say is that the situation would warrant the type of action.
And so you're saying that regardless of what the SOG might say, that you believe that termination was appropriate here?
I believe that termination was the only opportunity left or was appropriate. Typically, our SOGs are stating that it's up to and including termination.
So when did you yourself become aware of the crash involving firefighter Grant?
Been Monday morning.
So November 25. And were you in regular contact with anybody else at the fire department about firefighter Grant from that point forward?
In contact with our staff,
And then, and who on the staff? were you in contact?
deputy chiefs.
Okay. And would you, we've talked about Deputy Chief Chad G. He's one of them, correct? And then the other one is Deputy Chief Brooks Martin.
Yes,
So you spoke to those two individuals about firefighter Grant, getting updates about this situation, correct?
I did receive updates from them, yes.
Okay. And did you issue any directions to them during that process?
We had consultation with resources to ensure that whatever steps we take were the proper ones and accurate. And so we try to communicate all the processes and yeah, we together.
Was the communication with human resources, was that in the form of a phone call, a meeting, or a letter?
Have been the forms of phone, forms of physical meetings.
And who with human resources did you speak to?
Director Schmidt.
Did anybody else take part in those meetings?
The meetings that we had to ensure consistency and accuracy would have been Attorney's Office, Attorney Meese, Director Schmidt, County Chief Tebow, Deputy Chief Spark, G and I. We tried to keep that continuity.
Thank you. Now, I want to ask because we have concerns about discriminatory treatment, retaliatory treatment. Right? And I have to ask you, I have to do my job, but when firefighters make a complaint or a grievance about hires up, right? About people who are higher up in the administration than they are. Those are things that are brought to your attention. Is that correct?
If there's something I don't know, I would say I don't know, but
Sure.
if there is as you say, a grievance,
Sure.
the grievance would take through those channels.
Okay. And you're aware that firefighter Grand had made a grievance that was actually considered, it was examined by the city involving a captain at the Bismarck Fire Department. Is that correct?
In other words, that was a grievance or a comment or a process, but in terms of a grievance or we come together in this type setting, no.
Sure. That was something that the city attorney's office was involved in and an investigation was conducted, correct?
Can I ask what year you're talking about?
Well, I know of one at least in 2023. Does that sound accurate?
Okay. I'm aware of a process where there was communication between two employees that agreed to have communications with the Human Resources Department, and I believe the city attorney did sit in on those with the intent of, the purpose of working together. I think that was 23.
Okay. And was there another one? Was there one in 2020?
Yeah.
Was there also one in 2020 involving a complaint about the same individual? The same higher level individual that was made by firefighter Grant?
And that didn't come to my life. So it wasn't in the form of, like I said, a statement where people want to work together. So that one I can't comment on.
Sure. And I'm not going to get into names, but the individual who firefighter Grant had made the complaint about is a higher ranking individual at the Bismarck Fire Department, correct? Higher than her.
If you're referring to Captain Griffin, yes.
Yes. And he's still employed at the Bismarck Fire Department, correct? And obviously, I know that if I was to ask you, your response would be that firefighter Grant's termination had nothing to do with her complaint about that captain, correct? obviously still a concern. I don't have any other questions for you, sir.
I have one. You opened the door to this. Piece, so I'm gonna ask you. I read within some of the background that there was an incident that occurred in a firehouse where firefighter man was on restricted duty from a previous injury. Is that accurate?
I read it as well.
Yes.
Okay. And that you were, had been put on restricted light duty. Is that the right terminology that I'm using or something? Certain things that you were supposed to do, certain things that you weren't supposed to do. I'm sometimes kind of pig-headed my own self. So when I was told by my doctor I shouldn't do certain things, I kind of fudged on them, okay? Your particular instance, you were instructed that you had a maximum lifting capacity that you were not to exceed, is that right?
I'd have to look back, but I know I had a
The
paper.
weight was 50 pounds, okay? And you were lifting doors that were approaching 100 and sometimes 200 pounds, trying to load them into a trailer, is that right?
Whatever they were.
Above the limit that you might have been given as a maximum. My reading of the document said that you were asked to stand down from what you were doing.
That was in his statement, yes. But I had a doctor's note or my restrictions on what I could not do. He was
You had
not
something
aware.
similar.
He was not
You said,
aware of the
you said, I'm aware of what I can do was the response that I read. In other words, I'm trying to determine if in the past, when situations, if you have a compliance factor or if sometimes you have situations where you go, I know what I'm capable of, as I was done.
I always listen to my doctor or else I get yelled at.
Okay, but this seemed to go beyond that because, the investigation seemed to support the fact that you were in fact operating outside or implied that you were operating outside the guidelines that were given to you to return to duty. Is that anywhere close? I don't know if anybody, I don't know who else to ask.
Per my doctor, I was still under the
Okay,
guidelines.
but is your doctor part of the return to duty process that might have been authorized by the department? Okay, let's go back. If you have an injury, you have a restriction on what you can do. It would be prudent for your employer to know that,
And they were, yes,
Right. so that you would have told somebody what that was.
yes.
But maybe the question is, were you put under a return to duty exam at that time?
I don't know that. All I can tell you is that the reference was that she was operating outside of the conditions of her return to duty. I didn't get any more of that report, but I'm just trying to see if that was accurate or not. And I'm still confused.
So my,
Okay, so lifting those door panels that exceeded 50 pounds and being,
to what he said, but not to what I was restricted to.
Can I
Go for it. You
can
go
I
for
help
it.
you here? I think what he's driving at, or one of the things that in question here is, if your doctor said that you were cleared, why would you not have presented a copy of that to that supervisor so he would not have questioned you and said you're out of compliance?
They were aware of it. The captain he was not aware
that seems unusual.
because he was not in charge of me, like duty wise, his
Oh,
admin is in charge of me. So he would
But
have
this was-
never got
so
that
your
paper.
employer did get
Correct.
the
Okay, but what I'm hearing though is that immediate supervisors are the ones that usually and customarily have the most current information about.
And they were my current supervisors on my duty.
So the individual you were interacting with was a higher up in authority, captain or of the rank at that level. And he didn't know about that, but he observed you doing something that he felt was in non-compliance to what he thought was the order.
So, yeah.
I'm trying to put it into,
You have any comment on that? Any follow-up or any knowledge of that?
Going back in time, and there's restrictions that are in play and as a person is employed with these restrictions, we would expect compliance.
These were, Chief, apparently tangential to the process when the complaint was being filed with regard to, if not retaliation, a form of discrimination. Is that relative to the, I mean, am I on the same page here?
Well, you're asking me, so retaliation wise, Samantha Grand had made 2 complaints against a captain named Rusty Kirkova. There are other issues involving Captain Kirkova that go beyond what she has even experienced. It sounds as though he is a very interesting and rough character, which isn't necessarily a terrible thing in and of itself. But it is my understanding from talking to Samantha that there was another meeting, and it's not in the documentation provided by the city, where Janelle Combs, who was city attorney at that time, conceded that Captain Kirkova had spoken inappropriately to her about that incident, and that the firefighter Kruger, I believe, who made the report.
No relation.
No real, well, thankfully, had made statements that were not entirely accurate initially. But then I believe that it's alluded to in Leanne Schmidt's notes that he may have recanted. Well, maybe there was actually some swearing that was going on. So,
Okay, and that's, I understand that, Rev. My bigger concern was, the confusion over, because that to me would be a significant, the story that was portrayed to be in writing was these doors weighed between 100 and 200 pounds. This person was theoretically or practically on a limitation of this. And again, I don't know, but if this was, is this a pattern that somebody might say out of pride or a personal device? I can do it. I'm gonna tough through it. That's fine. Okay, I
Yeah.
understand that, but I'm just wondering if that's accurate.
I understand why you're questioning, that this firefighter Grand, does she just, charge ahead without regard for the rules of
She has 10 years with us that demonstrates that she has served this city very, very well. And for that service, I think we have a responsibility to respect that. But I also know that sometimes people they cowboy up.
Yeah.
No inference that cowboys are bad. I'm just simply saying sometimes, I don't know. And that's what I'm trying to take into consideration.
And if I could interject, we do have Leanne Schmidt as our last witness, and I think we're done with the chief, and I do have some questions for Leanne Schmidt. She could also testify about the termination of, the end of that interaction between Kirkova and Samantha Grand in 2023, and it was resolved. So if I could,
I
move on.
apologize. I read too far ahead again. I'm
no,
sorry.
you're fine.
I'm
You're
what you call
very
a
good
low
at
achiever, low
You're
potential high
good
achiever.
participation. If we could get Leanne, please. Thank you.
Okay, you all had a break before. If you need one now, you can have one. I took my own, but I would take a recess if I were, simply because we're now going on the second borrowed hour of our timetable.
Looks like your warning was well taken.
I've been there. Trust me. Thank you very much to my doctor who's giving me these
I guess
things that
they
they
can
give
wait.
me.
Likewise.
I mean, I think what you can do. Go for it.
You don't have any cough drops at your desk, do you?
I have, I got some on my desk.
Thank you. my, clearing my
Couple
throat,
of
probably
these.
getting annoying.
Probably not.
Good deal.
Thanks.
That's your throat that tickled, or I'm just hearing it everywhere.
That's just me. I did a lot of scouting at my kids' hockey tournament this weekend, so recovering.
How'd the kids do? How'd you do?
Second, over in the Capitals Cup. So my youngest son, he plays hockey. He's a fourth grader and he's what they call a squirt. That's their level of play. And so they ended up in the championship game losing to Regina, a sport team from Regina, 4-3. God, it was close. We were up for a good chunk of that too.
My heart goes out to you.
Well,
Keep working because you'll
yeah.
never afford.
Cost never afford not to, right?
And when they say they're really good, run, because you get to be on the traveling team, which costs you another couple grand in the summer months.
Yeah, we're going to Devil's Lake this coming weekend.
This is the season.
Oh, yeah, I know. Sure. Yeah, he signed up for Warriors with Mario, so we'll be on the road too.
Watch some of this thing on the board.
I know. The weird thing though is that I hate to say it because there are probably a ton of football fans, especially this time of year, but I can watch football and yeah, I don't really get too excited, but if I watch kids hockey, man, I'm up out of my seat.
Yeah, I'm saying if I could, or it's a mother's nightmare, I was going.
Oh, really?
Everybody lines. There's not a lot, there's few good days.
Did you ever play in the adult league?
No, in high school, I found out that just too bruising.
Well, there's some guys, Jamie Lannister plays. I don't know. He's probably not a whole lot older than me, but then, Red from Minot, and I can't remember his last name. He had to be probably close to 60. I know that some of the contortions that he did, I think he looked like he was in a lot of pain after the games.
Yeah, no, I can't think that one.
Well, if I can think of the Jim Becker, did you know Jim?
Yeah.
He's a probation officer at Center in Mandan, and Jim had played in the adult league, actually on the same team that I play on. I did, he hung it up before I started.
Yes. Yeah. Well, boy, it seems like they always find the spot the pad is. Okay, please find that on me.
So where did you play?
I just played up through the high school and then,
In Bismarck?
yep, Bismarck High, yep. Pretty much had to call her.
Yeah.
That wasn't good enough.
You know.
I think you are, and you realize.
Well, the adult league, I don't know. But,
Do that. Picked up pickleball now, that's a much safer sport.
well, now what I've heard, I've heard that pickleball is the greatest source of sports-related injuries in the United States.
Yeah.
I think as a matter of fact, I think my neighbor, Paul Sanderson, him and his brother were playing in a tournament up at Metagoshi 2 years or 3 years ago, and I think that Paul might have, or an ACL or something. You know, he's not that much older than me.
And it was in the nets falling on it, it's just like, what am I doing at age 6? Why?
Well, I mean, the popularity of the pickleball courts in town, you get away from playing this.
Crazy drugs. Like absurd, let's say, really. I would like to say, that's fantastic.
I love it too.
Everybody here?
Are we ready?
Here?
Okay, so, so the city's now calling Leanne Schmidt, and could you please state your occupation for the record?
I'm the HR director
And how long have you been the HR director?
since April of
And I'm assuming you had a career in HR prior to the city?
20 years.
Okay. And, do you get questions about city HR policies from employees? And how do you handle those questions?
I'll answer their questions, provide feedback, whatever they think.
Okay. And are you familiar with the fit for duty or return for duty process?
Yes.
And that process is used for city employees, is that correct? Not just firefighters?
Yeah.
Okay. And what is done with the information that you gather from the fit for duty, or that is provided to you as a result of the fit for duty process?
Well, it's filed in the medical file, basically, get information about whether or not they're fit for duty or not.
Okay, but you don't get the details
No,
of their issue, okay. Would other employees be informed about an individual's fit for duty process?
no.
Okay. And why is that?
Well, it would be on a need to know, so. I mean, a supervisor, if they supervise the employee, but we're not gonna publish information that about just the general public.
So on December 2nd of last year, you had a phone call with Samantha Grant, is that correct?
On the 4th,
I'm sorry, on the 4th.
yes,
Okay, and that was, well, and on the 2nd, you had one with another firefighter, is that right?
that's correct,
And you explained the fit for duty process.
that's correct.
Okay. And then on December 4th, you had a phone call with Samantha Grant, is that correct?
Yes, she left me a message and I returned her call.
Okay, and for everybody's reference, it's the last tab. It's called Schmidt. And so you documented the phone call that you had with her, is that correct?
That's correct.
And, was that in the morning or afternoon?
It was in the morning.
Okay. And how many times did you explain the fit for duty process to Samantha Grant?
During the process, during the conversation, or I would say several, anyway. 2 to 3, not more.
Okay. And you told her it was not a written city policy. Can you explain that?
She wanted to see the fit for duty policy. I said, well, we don't specifically have one. It's inherent in running the department, having people operating equipment. So it's a process associated with risk for the city.
Okay, but there's a written fire department policy.
There are SOGs, yes.
Okay, and so this would also apply to her as a firefighter. What was her demeanor on the phone?
I think towards the end of the calls, I think she was a little frustrated
Mm-hmm.
because she just said multiple times, she just didn't understand the process. She didn't think it was something that had ever been done in the department. And I explained that it had been done in that department as well as other departments. The process is about us making sure we have done our assessment for the city and ensuring people can perform the essential functions of the job, which includes operating equipment in a lot of cases.
Are you all right?
I will live.
Okay.
We have a lot of EMTs out in the hall to help. No,
Well, sure enough. So we've had discussions over the issue in 2023 with Rusty Krikova. Okay. Now, you were involved in the discussions between Rusty Krikova and Samantha Grant, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So ultimately, there was a meeting. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Was there an investigation?
There was an investigation of sorts. We did follow up regarding concerns, interviewing those people involved, taking notes, having them review the notes. It's fairly informal. It was
Okay.
more about facilitating through what the issue was, and then facilitating conversation for a effective working environment.
Okay, did you have that discussion with Samantha Grant and Rusty Crick about, and facilitate a resolution to their issue?
Yes,
Okay, when, do you recall when that occurred?
it was in August of 2023. I don't have the exact date.
Okay, but that's contained within
Yes.
the information. Okay. And at the end of that meeting, did you have a conversation or did Samantha Grand make a statement to you?
Yes, as they were leaving the legal conference room, Rusty Kripke come out and shook my hand and left. And then Sam came out, shook my hand and said, "You did good." I left.
Okay, so when she said you did good and shook your hand, what did you take that to mean?
I took that to mean that the process is effective and it's a good starting point for preparing the relationship.
Okay. And have you had any further issues brought to your attention regarding Rusty Kripke and Samantha Grant?
Not since then, no.
Not since then. Okay. Thank you. I've got no further questions.
Hearing none from the commissioners, I'll jump in. So the fit for duty, return to duty process, you don't know specifically what happens behind the doors of the medical appointment, correct?
No, I don't. And that's one thing that Sam and I talked about. I said, well, I'm not a provider, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not there, but they're gonna do whatever the process is that they need to.
And if the provider had asked, if the provider ultimately wrote a letter requesting a diagnosis and then what the course of treatment was, and if Samantha Grand was to have provided that, she would have complied, correct?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Okay, so if, yes, I'll let you take a look at that. You haven't seen it yet, but you're familiar with the FNP who's been referenced, the HPC, correct? Nelia Dyack. Take a moment and read the letter, but it appears as though that's a letter that is for Samantha Grand to take to her medical provider, correct? To get a diagnosis and a course of treatment. And the email, I'm assuming you've seen virtually everything in this folder, correct? So there was the email that was sent by Nelia Dyack to Chad G on December 4th, where it said that Samantha was going to try and get that information and then try to get that to Nelia Dyack by the next day, the 5th, correct? Do you recall reading that email? Or that she was supposed to do that?
I recall an email from.
Don't remember the exact contents, that's fine. That's fine. We've kind of gone over it already. It is interesting that you'd said that this fit for duty process, it's not a written policy.
We don't have a specific policy for the city. It's inherent in making sure people can do the job and then perform the essential functions. And if they're operating equipment, we have an obligation to make sure they can do that. And I explained that to Sam when we talked. I said, if we took your provider's information that's outside of our process, something happens, then we're on the hook. Well, why didn't you, City of Bismarck, follow your process?
Sure.
No.
But if that's what's being requested by Nelia Dyack, then it's fine, right? Because she's the HPC contractor, correct? Or she works for the HPC contractor.
She's doing the assessment, yes. But I also explained that it's not up to HPC to decide what works for the city. Right?
Okay.
In terms of, saying that her medical doctor can provide information that's going to satisfy our fit for duty process. That's not how it works.
So who would then make that determination?
Well, she would complete the fit for duty review with the HPC provider, which is our process.
And that's Nelia Dyack, correct?
Right.
Okay, and if that's what the information that Nelia Dyack is asking for, both in that letter and stated in the email to Chad G, doing so would then be complying with that fit for duty
It would be
process.
part of the process. It wouldn't be the process. It would be part of it. It's the background that they need for completing the fit for duty process.
Okay.
Question. I understand the medical aspects of that, but the other aspects, which are the abilities, there's an acronym, help me out, boys. It's the ability where they actually, I don't think Nellie has a 4-story building that they've got to run up the steps on. I don't think that she has ladders that they.
It's not
climb.
the
She
demonstrative difficult part.
she may use the fire academy for that kind of thing as a, so Nellie is restricted to, okay, not restricted, but she is dealing with this medical aspect of it, and then may in turn, does she, I don't know, you have to answer me, I'm not trying to answer. I would assume that she might farm some of that other stuff out to those who have the usual and customary ability to evaluate that. I don't know, I mean, I was also, another point, you have policies in an organization. And then you have what you might also refer to as processes, sometimes called protocols, and in some people's world, they're called procedures. A policy is a different thing than is a procedure. Procedure is the process by which a policy is enacted. I mean, the fact that you don't have an FFD policy per se does not preclude the fact that you have a procedure for that.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't getting it out of line with what my brain was at. Thank you, John. I'm done.
Okay, so then moving on to the Rusty Kirk of a complaint and investigation. You're also familiar with the documents that are in the record or in this packet, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, and so essentially the complaint was that Captain Rusty Kirkaba was really rude, swearing when he was confronting firefighter Grant, completely inappropriately, by the way, for a supervisor to be addressing someone in her position about her trying to lift a door. Is that correct?
That's what I understand. It was public.
And what was noteworthy about that was that there was a witness to this, a firefighter Kruger, correct? And
That's the name, yeah.
and firefighter Kruger initially denied that Captain Rusty Kirkaba had done anything wrong. He denied there was any swearing or anything of that nature in his initial written statement. Is that correct?
I haven't reviewed it recently, but yeah, that's what you say.
But then you interviewed people who were involved in this, and then firefighter Kruger kind of backtracked on that and said, well, there might have been some swearing. Is that accurate?
I haven't looked at it recently, but yeah, that's what's in the record. Yeah.
Okay, so an uncharitable person might say that firefighter Kruger lied in his initial statement, right? And, I mean, you're just doing your job, right? But an uncharitable person might say that, and firefighter Grant might be really grateful to you for sussing out the truth. Is that fair to say? Sure. Right? And again, these are probably kind of rhetorical questions, but firefighter Kruger was lower in rank or lower in authority than Captain Kirkaba at that time, correct?
He was a firefighter. He wasn't a captain.
Okay. And so, again, it's speculative, but one reason that an underling may lie to protect somebody above him is just for fear of retaliation. That's a fair assumption or a fair guess as to a human motivation, correct?
I suppose that's one reason why they may behave that way.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so based upon this letter from Nelia to whoever the medical provider was, and we still don't know, this looked to be a starting point as part of the process for the fit for duty, right? It makes sense.
Yes.
That they would review medical records from a primary physician.
Yes.
But we don't know the further steps that Nelia Dyack would have taken in that whole process.
Right, and there's no date on it.
Right. And then for this Kirkaba stuff, there's all sorts of speculation about what anybody may have had for motivation. But what we do know is that that situation was resolved in August of 2023.
That's correct.
No further questions. And the city has no further witnesses, and the city is going to rest after. Well, we will move to. We'll rely on the record as contained on these documents, and then the one provided over email or electronically, let's say.
Yeah, and I have no objection to these documents being considered by the commission. I think that they're all appropriate, relevant. I am assuming that the exhibit that I've provided so far has also been considered as well.
Okay, this one was yours.
Yeah, these were the documents that I pulled out that we were going to reference
And you had something that you presented to us?
Yeah.
This one
That's
that we
what I-
passed
oh,
on,
and
that
we could-
passed
oh, I'm
on.
sure we
that's-
could- Yeah, we could have copies made if need be. So if the city is resting, I mean, without, I guess, going on and on and on, I can call my witness, which would be Samantha Grant.
Awesome. It's about time she had a chance to speak. Still.
It's very, it's all since Friday till.
Okay, do you want this closed a little bit? Because
Yes, it keeps coming.
one of the two, I'm not so sure which one it is.
That's right.
I'll just scooch back. You're awesome. Thank you.
Whatever. There doesn't see a whole lot of, there does that.
Is that better?
Yes,
Thank
you
you very
agree,
much.
thank you. I know I look for that too.
I think that's like the new.
Okay. Your name is Samantha Grant?
Yeah.
How old are you?
Already.
All right. And how many years working as a Bismarck firefighter? Were you a firefighter before that? Where was that at?
Oakdale,
Minnesota, and how many years?
almost 10.
Almost 10. So at age 40 with 20 years of fire service experience, is it fair to say that to start over at age 40 as a firefighter would be a challenge?
Yes.
Okay. So moving ahead then to November 24th of last year, you recall being in the crash that we have talked about, correct? Do you have much recollection of the moments immediately before the crash?
Just that I was a little lightheaded and a little hot. On the window and sorry.
So then the crash happened and you had other fire personnel and medical personnel nearby, correct? Okay.
I called them
You called, and who did you call?
at station 1.
Station 1. Then that would be the fire station. Okay. So then they came out and helped you?
Yeah.
So you had, however briefly you had lost consciousness, you were still the first, essentially, conscious person on the scene.
Yeah.
Okay, so you called people and they came and helped. And you don't remember making a statement that of having previous fainting spells, do you? Okay. Now, you've had an opportunity to watch the body cam footage of law enforcement, and you would agree that you made that statement that you had previous fainting spells, correct? But do you believe that that is an accurate statement of your medical history?
Absolutely not.
Okay, why is that?
So I've never passed out prior to that day.
Okay. It's fair to say that you have experienced some episodes of lightheadedness. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
And when did you first know those?
A couple months prior, there's only been a few.
Okay. As a matter of fact, it was not very loud, but during that body cam footage, do you recall hearing your voice telling one of the people there that you had perhaps 3 or 4 months that you had noted that? Okay, so that,
I think that's,
you think it was less time than that? Okay. And do you also recall hearing your voice on the body camera footage saying that I never thought it was a big deal. I didn't even talk to my doctor about the lightheadedness.
yes.
Okay, because when you felt lightheaded in the past, what, I guess, describe for us what the feeling was and what you did.
You get like a little fuzzy, get a little hot, and then you lay down and feel fine.
Okay, so in those moments, I don't know, were those moments that you experienced that something where you felt like you would cause harm to yourself or to others if you were operating a vehicle? Do you think that in those moments that you'd have had to have pulled over, or do you think that you'd have been fine just remaining seated?
I'm fine during those times.
Fine during those times? Okay. But you would take a break, and how long would the lightheadedness last?
10 minutes, not even.
Okay,
All right.
Like it would start and then progressively get better.
And
Start to finish.
did it happen a total of twice before this?
Maybe 3,
Maybe 3? Okay.
2 for sure.
And so it wasn't something that caused you any concern where you felt like you needed to go to the doctor?
No.
Now, during your annual physical, which was in November of 2024, you did disclose that you were on blood pressure medication, correct?
Correct.
And was that medication for high blood pressure or was that medication to raise your blood
It
pressure?
was 4 high blood pressure.
Okay. And so based on what you know and your communication with your physician, is your blood pressure, did it have any relation to the fainting episode on November 24th?
No.
Okay, and you, in meeting with your primary care physician, you discovered what that was caused by, correct?
Yes.
What was that?
Low iron.
Low iron, right? So November 24th, the accident happens. You were supposed to go on duty that day. You got a ride to the hospital, correct?
Yes.
You were checked out at the hospital and then you went home, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you were not directed by your employer, the fire department, to schedule any sort of medical checkup of any kind at that point?
No.
Okay, you took it upon yourself to schedule an appointment with your medical provider on Tuesday, December 26th. You met with that person. They reviewed records from your visit to the emergency room, correct?
Yes.
Because your blood had been drawn and labs had been taken, correct? And at that point in time, did your doctor believe that you were okay to return to work?
Yes.
Okay, did your doctor provide you with a dated letter and a dated return to work statement?
Yes.
This is from a later date. I'm gonna hand you what I've marked as Grand 2.
Yes.
A letter from your doctor?
Okay.
What's your doctor's name?
Makes that.
Vanessa Magstad, and she is an MD medical doctor?
Yes.
Okay, and how long have you been seeing Dr. Magstad? April? Okay, and she's aware of your medical history? Woman. You, the commissioners can certainly, it's needed. So then on December 1st, there was a return to work statement also signed by Dr. Maggs. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Was that something that, when you were told that you needed a return to work, that then you thought, well, okay, I'll get this done by my doctor?
HPC said she had to fill out this paper.
Okay, so let me back you up. When did HPC tell you that your doctor had to fill that out?
First.
Okay. Was the first time you went in on December 2nd?
Yes.
Okay, now I would note that
Right.
this is
Oh,
dated on December the 1st. So is that something that you had just asked your doctor to do?
I know HPC gave it this. Oh, because she said I told her to backdate it because I could go back to work that day.
Okay,
I was supposed to be released that day.
okay. So this was a form that you received from HPC.
Yes.
Did Nelia Dyack give you that form?
Yes.
And then you took that to your doctor and asked your doctor, because she had already cleared you,
Correct.
if you could be cleared for work as of December 1.
Yes.
Smart.
She wanted to make sure it matched the first one.
Okay. This is Grand 3. So when Nelia Dyack gave you that form, were you under the impression that having your doctor fill that out, that would take care of it?
Yes.
And it was after that you were told, well, no, you need to have another appointment with HPC.
And I ask a good question. But it's checked off here. And as of 12/1, perform the essential task. Do they have a copy of your essential? Does your doctor have a
They
copy
never
of
gave
your
me one.
essential tasks? But yet she's saying that you're cleared to perform them, but she didn't know what they were.
She knows what I do, but she goes, I wasn't given anything. HPC, I asked for papers and she didn't give me any either.
And so then, you have another meeting with Nelia Dyak of HPC on December the 4th, correct?
Yes.
And during that meeting, Nelia Dyak told you that she needed medical records related to you, correct?
Yes.
And you had expressed some concerns because this incident had happened on personal time as opposed to work time, and you didn't want to mix personal records with work records, correct?
Correct.
But then you asked for clarification from Nelia Dyak about whether you could get information from your doctor for her.
Yeah.
Is that accurate? And she told you that she needed it.
I'm sorry to interject, and I normally wouldn't do this, but you're really leading her. Could you ask open-ended questions and let her testify?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm looking at the time, that's all.
No, I got you.
So what did Nelia Dyak tell you that she needed from your primary care doctor on December 4th? What two pieces of information did she
What
need?
it was, the diagnosis and what we were doing to fix it.
Okay. And, I may grab that number one. So handing you what's been marked as a grand one.
Yes.
Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
Okay, who did you get that from?
The NP from HPC.
Okay, Nelia Dyak?
Yeah.
Okay, and does that reiterate what we had just talked about, that she wanted the diagnosis or that she wanted the course of treatment?
Yes.
So you were under the understanding, well, what did you think would happen if you provided this information that she was asking for?
That she was gonna look it over and then sign the same sheet that my doctor did.
Okay, so you thought that you would be in compliance,
Yes.
okay? So then, did you ultimately go back to Dr. Magstead?
Yep, she gave me that letter Wednesday and I got to my doctor on Thursday.
Thursday, what time on Thursday?
I don't know. Remember.
Okay. Did you meet with Nelia Dyak in the afternoon on Wednesday,
Yes.
if you remember?
Yes.
Okay,
I was in her office and I made an appointment on my phone immediately to go to her.
okay. Now, do you think that you're fortunate to be able to see your doctor on such short notice?
Yes.
You mean you don't get to just open the door into your doctor's office whenever you want?
She had an opening.
So did you receive that letter then that's in your hands on that Thursday?
Yes.
Okay, Thursday, December 5th.
Yes.
And you'll notice that it's not dated, correct? I don't think there's a date anywhere.
Yeah.
Seen on December 5th, but there's no date up.
Oh, yeah.
But it's your testimony that you received that letter in hand that same Thursday.
Yes.
Did you intend to provide that letter to HPC?
Yes, Friday I was gonna drive down and drop it off.
Okay. What happened on Friday?
I was called into the chief's office and got fired at 8:30.
You received a letter telling you that you're being terminated from your employment.
Yes.
That was that. And nobody at your employment asked to see any of this stuff
No.
after. It was just, you were done.
Yes.
Now, do you believe that you're treated fairly?
Absolutely not.
Do you think that you were given an adequate amount of time to comply with what was being requested of you?
No.
Do you think that it's possible that it could have something to do with your sex?
Possibly.
Do you think it's possible that it could be retaliatory for complaints that you made about Captain Kirkova?
Yes.
Now, ultimately, you know, we're having a civil service commission meeting this afternoon. I mean, if there's any one thing that was within the commission's power that you could ask of them, what would you ask?
Yeah, Joe.
Despite how you were treated?
Yes.
I don't have any other questions.
I have a question for you. In the packet of information that we got electronically, it mentions that you were presented with the opportunity to transfer to a different shift than officer or captain or Mr. Kverkova. You said no. You said you weren't interested in that. Why? If he
Because we
was,
should be able to work together. I shouldn't have to move. I did end up, they ended up moving me.
So in your opinion, you thought that you would be able to,
I was hoping to. I always have
you
positivity.
didn't, you thought things would work out.
That was always my hope.
I have a follow-up question to that. In the fire department world, if you get moved to another shift, how does that reflect on you?
Makes me look like I'm the problem. Again, why did they want to move?
So how does it make you look staying there? After you brought it, thought that it's gonna work through? How does that?
I was like, I think we should be able to get along. So I was hoping we could get past that because we're supposed to have each other's back.
Yeah.
So you don't have to you don't have to like the person. We have to get along and work together, all together. That was always my goal. He was a very smart captain and I wanted to still learn from him. So.
I'm confused, not an unusual position for me. This last captain or firefighter that you were talking about is whom please?
Rusty Kirkova.
Is he a captain?
Yes.
Is he still employed?
Yes.
Curious that we haven't heard from him if some of these items are being discussed in terms of either retaliation, discrimination. I don't know.
They weren't a factor.
And Chairman,
Pardon?
They weren't a factor.
They're not.
I understand, but they're being raised right now as something that's relative.
if I may, we're not asking that the commission do anything about retaliation or discrimination. However, just because the question's been asked. So before any type of complaint gets filed with the Department of Labor, I believe that this is a process that has to be followed through to its termination, right?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I am assuming that if firefighter Grand.
They won't be disappointed.
I'm assuming that if firefighter Grand was able to maintain her employment, I guess I haven't spoken with her about, actions from there. Ultimately, what she is asking, and I believe by city ordinance, it's within the commission's power to restore her employment.
This is gonna follow, but I'm this simple kind of guy. We're here talking about one set of circumstances, but a half dozen times we've heard the terms retaliation, discrimination. So, I mean, I had to clarify that for myself because something keeps coming up. It's something that keeps coming up. It's hard to unsee it if you get my meaning.
It's challenging, and I don't know that these meetings are well equipped for that, because I think that for us to try to prove discrimination or retaliation, we would need access to a great many documents.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think
Plus,
that,
we're not a court.
I think that basically they just need to get mentioned for the sake of form, so that if things continue, then we will have at least.
So you're not asking us to consider those two elements, even though we have repeatedly brought them up in this process of her being stated. Is that what you're suggesting to me?
We're not asking for a remedy from the commission to those things. We are.
Okay,
We're
I gotta
asking
get
for-
back to my basic point, which is one of the things we look at is what was, and may I, is this a time for me to do this? Can I ask some questions? You were hired 10 years ago, right? They took you through an extraordinarily complete and thorough orientation, didn't they? That's tongue in cheek.
2 weeks, yes.
Yeah, okay, and during that time, they exposed you to a policy that they call a personnel policy manual, right? And you read that, you laughed, you cried, you rode the roller coaster of emotion, but in that process, at some point, did you sign a document that said, I have read this, I understand it, and I understand that I'm obligated to follow these rules?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, from time to time, did they update those things to you?
Periodically, one by one.
No, one by one. And then did you at that time again sign a document that said, I saw it? Okay, in other words, there is a process that was routinely followed if there were changes to that basic policy, personnel policy document, right?
Yes.
In that protocol, first policy and then process or protocol procedure, was it describe what would happen if you were injured or you had, in other words, this whole concept of return to duty and having to, and the basis for it was for your protection, the protection of the citizens and your fellow officers.
The only time I ever got hurt was on duty.
If you got hurt on duty or you were having something you fell on your ski trip to Aspen and you broke your leg, that you'd probably have to have a return to duty before you'd come back and fight fires, right?
Yes.
So you knew that was happening. And that was a condition of your working there. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So you knew that there was a policy. You knew that there was a policy manual. The policy manual was updated. You knew that there was a policy that was specifically designed so that if there was something that happened that could in some fashion impair your abilities, that had to be followed. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Those things seem to have been followed. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. That's the things we have to deal with. It's grand, unfortunately. Was your policy?
No, I'm saying I followed it.
Okay. Are we following it now in the process of giving you this hearing? We're listening to what you have to say, or then referring to the existence of the policies, your awareness of what those policies were and are, any changes that were made to those policies or procedures. And then the question was raised, did you in fact follow the instructions of that return to work? And that area gets very gray. And then I see in fact that you did the medical aspects of it, but I see that you did not, or were unable to, or were not. The requirement was that you had to demonstrate your capacity to do those things. Were you ever asked to do that?
Whatever HPC said, I followed.
Maybe the question is, were you asked to do anything physically by HPC as part of the return to duty exam?
No.
Did they have the chance to do that? Because it looked like it got bogged down on the medical records.
They did have a chance to do that, yes.
Didn't hear that.
When or how?
When? I didn't how.
I asked them
Like
to.
you didn't go. You didn't go.
Oh, I went twice to HPC.
That's right.
But in both instances, it became bogged down in the question of whether or not your medical records were going to be released. Is that accurate?
I was still wanting to know if I wanted to hand them in, but I wanted to make sure I got them. And once I got them, I was like, I want
So
to
the
hand them in
focus of the
Friday.
meetings was not on your ability to climb a ladder, run upstairs, or carry 50 pounds.
That was never gonna be one.
I don't know that it wasn't,
That's
because I
why
don't know that it wasn't a stand.
the nurse refused to do an exam with me.
Because,
I asked her to do one.
because
She said, we don't do those here.
It does not mean that they were not going to be done. I don't believe. I'm confused by this.
I asked her to do a physical exam on me.
I'm trying
She
every
refused.
possible way to come to the conclusion that you'd like. I'm being challenged by it, Ms. Grant, because I appreciate and honor the service you've given to my community. But I'm frustrated by the fact that what we're adjudicating here as a commission is a process. Did the process exist? Was the process clear and fully understood and acknowledged? And was it followed?
It was not fully understood. I was confused the whole entire time.
Well, you signed documents that said you weren't confused.
Well, her battalion chief who was giving her instructions didn't even understand the process. That much was very.
Interject here, that the battalion chief clearly said, first he did, that's true. He did say, fine, that was great. Immediately then, they said, no, he said, no, you have to do the fit for duty process. And then 2 appointments were made, and that's where we get. So if there had been confusion because it's not common for this battalion chief to have someone go through the fit for duty process, but he did clarify with the DCs who are familiar, and immediately you were informed. And then you were also informed on December 4th in the morning by Director Schmidt. So there was knowledge that these processes had to be followed.
That's where I'm getting hung up.
Well, because when I went to
It
HPC,
wasn't just
I
one
asked
thing.
her.
There are steps. There were steps.
Yeah, I asked her,
And,
so
well,
what
I mean-
are the steps? She was not aware of these steps.
And don't forget, she went through.
I was really confused.
She went through, as she testified, she went through a work-related injury previously, and none of this HPC, none of the return to duty items were even addressed. And so the policy itself is
Yeah, I'm-
implemented haphazardly at best, and on what basis, I'm having a time understanding.
It seemed to me that, I think it was the, Bosflug, Mr. Bosflug had said that, no, and the person before him, G, says that if it's orthopedic related, then they don't, then they let the orthopedist, that lets a broken leg, a torn, a pulled muscle, something like that. They don't require the full level of checkup that they would for something when someone fainted. So we don't know I guess I don't know, maybe it's in here, what the the first injury was. But if that was kind of an orthopedic injury, you pulled a muscle in your back or something, they've indicated that that process would have been different. It wouldn't have been as extreme as something.
In my recollection from those, I think it was an injured knee and a pullback. I think there was at least 2.
And then, I don't mean to be smart, but back issues are about as complicated as the day is long. And to not require a fit for duty when someone has a back injury seems, it just seems awful convenient here.
It also seems challenging. Benji, that your client flat refused to do some of these things. I mean, that's kind of unusual.
Let's think about the time frame that we are involved in here. We're talking about the matter of about 48 hours, 72 hours, right? I think that this is a person who is trying to understand the policy, doesn't really want to provide her personal medical information, but then determines ultimately that she must.
She
And she's
doesn't
on
get
the
to
way-
make that determination. The fire department does. She told the officer,
Sure.
and she can say now that she didn't pass out. She said for 3 to 4 months she'd been passing out. And what she said was, I may not have told my doctor because they're gonna maybe make it a bigger deal. That's her words that you can hear at 10 minutes and 14 seconds into the video, the body
She
cam.
said she didn't think it was a big deal.
Well, if you're driving a vehicle and you pass out, it's a big deal. If you drive a fire truck and you pass out, you're gonna kill people. And that's what we wanted to prevent. And then she was obfuscating and preventing the determination of whether or not she was fit to proceed. If she had just done it, she'd still be employed. She absolutely refused. She doesn't get to make that determination. The fire chiefs do.
Absolutely refused is some very absolute language, and there's a letter that is directly to the contrary. She did not absolutely refuse.
She didn't want to provide, at the very first meeting, she didn't want to provide, so the nurse practitioner, the provider had to say she was not fit. She doesn't get to determine whether or not she's going to give the information and keep her job.
So if your boss asks you to do something that you disagree with, you're not gonna hesitate.
I'm not driving a fire truck and could kill people. I'm not a first responder taking responsibility for the safety of the citizens. That's not me.
Part of this, we're trying to come up with a resolution here, and what I'm seeing here is just, it's convenient not to provide something when we're trying to get to the whole. And I still don't understand why you are, what caused that low iron like that? And now you want your job back, and that's, I would too. But I gotta look at the whole picture of, you know, what do we do to make sure that this doesn't happen on the job or happen when you're driving the truck or when you're helping somebody or in your building and all of a sudden the fire attention goes to you saying, we gotta go rescue her. You know, because she's not answering her alarm and so again. So I would think that you'd be just common sense for me. I would want to say, okay, here's my records. And here's what we're trying to do. And by doing that, you would look at it and go, okay, we can work with this. Let's get her a little light duty. Let's monitor it. Let's see what the spells are. You're following up with your doctor. Your doctor's communicating with us. We got a good firefighter back in action here like that. But just the roadblocks like that, just tell me, I don't want to comply, but I want the privilege like that. I just wrestle with that. I guess maybe I'm just a rule follower that I would have just provided and taken what happened. You've got a skill set that I'm sure the city of Bismarck didn't want to lose. Mandan would want, everybody would want, because it's a knowledge that not everybody like that. So let's make that work, you know, getting into a higher position or something like that. If you do have those fainting spells, or if you do have those low iron like that, or let's figure out why the low iron, and if they correct that, they'll give you an all clear and you're good to go. So that's where I really wrestle with this, is just the vagueness of why we don't want to come to a resolution on this whole thing. I may be soapboxing here, but.
Well, I think it's significant, again, the time periods that we're talking about. She went into her doctor, got clearance, was explained by her doctor as to what the source of the issue was. She thought that was good.
But that
She may not have.
an option under the process that she'd already been exposed to, acknowledged and accepted.
You say that, but she already didn't have to do a fit for duty after her previous injury. And sure, the administration might say, well, orthopedic injuries don't count, but do the firefighters know that? Is that communicated to them?
She has to follow the chain of command, right? She understands that. The chain of command told her, do the HPC, do fit for duty at HPC. It wasn't go to your doctor and get some vague note. Go to HPC, let them sort it out. She didn't do that. And she can say, well, I didn't have to do it before. It doesn't matter. Her commanders, the battalion chief, not just her captain, the battalion chief and 2 deputy chiefs were involved in this process. And she's still telling them, no, she wasn't going to participate.
She ever said no to any of her supervisors?
Well, maybe not directly, but certainly indirectly, she was telling them she was going to determine her best course of action for the fire department. That's not her role.
I'd be curious then to know just how much time is given to other firefighters under similar circumstances.
You
But
know,
that's not for today.
It's
That's
not
later
for
down the
today.
road.
That's for sure.
Well, one thing in those letters, it seems to me like if we came to Friday the 4th, was Friday
Friday the
6th.
Yes, sir.
If there was gonna be, or even on the 5th, if there was gonna be trouble getting in to see your doctor, that you would have made a call back to your supervisor to say, can I have an extension? I'm having trouble. There was nothing, so there was nothing on your part asking to assist you in that.
I got the doctor, so I didn't have to.
Your doctor, what?
On that Thursday, I got in, so I didn't have to.
But you were supposed to call HPC on the 5th and that phone call was not made.
'Cause by the time I got home, it was too late.
You didn't keep them updated as to what you were doing, if you were doing anything. And you'd already obfuscated twice before.
I'm gonna exercise a little bit of role the chairman might have in a situation like this and say, is there any more information that either side wishes us to hear before I ask my colleagues to come forth? And I'll ask the attorney, would you give us are there 3 options that we have? Is that accurate?
That's correct. Let me see if I can Oh, I hope my computer's not completely
Affirm,
dead.
modify, or remand.
Yeah,
Say it again. Say it again. Confirm.
Affirm, modify, or remand.
Thank you. That's what I thought it would be. I would entertain a conversation, first of all. Before we do that, Robert's Rules of Order would normally prescribe that we would have a motion. Entertain a motion for one of you to give to affirm, modify, or remand. Okay. I mean, I don't know, are you at a point that you want to affirm, modify, or remand?
Yeah, I'd make a motion that we affirm the decision that was made. Is that what we're at?
Yes.
Around that?
Is there a second? This time, is there any discussion that either of us or any of us want to put into that? Y'all are part of it, but you're out of it. Sorry, this is now our part. Yes, we welcome your attendance, but we're not going to entertain any assistance. I have to stand that I wish we had a fourth option, but we don't. The modification I have is not going to, would not be, I think, acceptable. I would suggest to you that I think we have to affirm it. I think that we have a responsibility. The fact that to the best of our ability, policy existed. Process and the protocol was present. Whether or not that was uniformly and always, I don't know. But in this particular case, it was affirmed by instructions that were specific. You need to do these things which involve these steps. And it does not, I mean, I understand that what I'm suggesting is our city is losing 10 years of experience and all the investment they have in that, but I don't know that we have an alternative. I don't know.
You have to call for a vote.
I would call for a vote, but I also want you gentlemen to stand up and say if am I missing something here? Are you in agreement with the assessments I'm making, or?
I came to that conclusion based on simply the facts of this particular situation and the inability, not inability, but the decision not to follow the commands of how to go about this.
So we're knowing.
And that's what it comes down to. And then nothing else, anything else we've heard really matters other than that.
I agree. I totally agree with that. That's.
Okay. I'm going to suggest that I know how I'm going to vote, and I'm going to say to you, sometimes I have to vote things that I don't like the impact. But those in favor of affirming, want a roll call?
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. All right. Ready for more business to come before this austere body?
Not today.
Not today. Ms. Brand, again,
Thank you.
I need to ask you these two questions. Were you heard? Did we listen to you? You feel we treated you fairly?
No.
Don't know how I could remedy that, and that's why I want to. Thank you.
Thank you. Good time. I wanted it.
Best of luck.
Good to meet you, gentlemen. Nice to meet you again.
You bet.